Hey folks, Brad here. We're going to be doing Wolverine with this little 2-hour character creation video, and the base mesh that I'm starting with is this guy right here. Now, if you don't have this base mesh, and I looked all through my receipts, I didn't get it from Gumroad or ArtStation as far as I can tell, so I have no idea where he came from. If you don't have this one, any base mesh will do, of course. You can see here, this one does have some poly groups that are kind of created for it from the get-go. I didn't make these poly groups, but I do use them as a way of just kind of separating the faces into the parts that I'm going to be kind of like sculpting separately. So whether or not you have this base mesh or one similar to it, the one thing you might need to do is just kind of take the base mesh that you have and just use your selection tools to make them different poly groups so that we can separate the parts together. But aside from that, any base mesh will do. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Let's get started on working on our Wolverine. The very first thing I want to do, I'm going to come here to my little poly frame so I can see what's going on here. You can see there's lots of different colors here. We're going to use that to our advantage eventually. But what I want to do is I want to split off right away the eyes because they're actually part of the head right now. And these different colors are called polygroups, and you can isolate them by using your selection tool, which is activated by holding down Control and Shift at the same time. So Control, you know, is your mask, Shift is your smooth, Control and Shift is your selection tool. Now I'm going to hold down Control and Shift and tap on the eyes, and it's going to isolate the eyes. Okay, if I Control Shift tap on the eyes a second time, it'll now hide those eyes and leave behind the actual body. So the eyes are hidden. And now I can come down here and just choose Split Hidden, and now in my subtool palette I have the body and the eyes, and I'm ready to go. And what I'm going to do basically in this video is just set up my scene, because I can actually kind of determine exactly what parts I want to separate, because you can see by his outfit here there's some really cool ways we can kind of keep these things separate and not get bogged down. So the first thing I want to do, you can see here the sleeve, such as it is, pretty much just covers the shoulder. So basically I'm going to isolate and separate the arm. So hold down Control and Shift again and tap on the purple bicep, Control Shift tap on it a second time, and now whatever I Control Shift tap on will hide. Now there's a lot of different groups here. I don't want to Control Shift tap on a million of them. So I want to hold down Control and Shift and also Alt. All three buttons. Alt is the opposite. So if I hold down Control and Shift and then hold down Alt, if I just tap and drag a square, you see it's going to drag out this red square. It's going to hide those hands. And now I'm going to come over down here and hit Split Hidden. Now we have the arm set up. I'm going to do the same thing with the legs. You see he's wearing this pair of shorts and the legs are kind of separate. So I'm going to hold down Control and Shift and tap on the pelvis. Then Control Shift tap on it a second time, and now I'm going to just Control Shift tap, and now I can just Control Shift Alt and drag out a big old square to hide the legs, and again Split Hidden. So now we have a lot of the stuff separated in ways that's going to make it useful for us to move forward. Alright, and basically what I'm going to do before I get any further is I want to kind of close these things up. So if I go here, I'm going to hit solo mode. You can see this is hollow now. If I turn on double-sided down here, you can see it's actually just a hollow opening. So I'm going to come here with my move brush and just kind of bring these edges up to a kind of more of a level state. And then I'm just going to come up here and just choose close holes. You're going to see it's going to close these holes up. It's kind of an ugly triangle thing, but we're not really going to see that anyway. It's going to be tucked into the body. Let's go here to the torso. You can see here we have a bunch of situations here where we have to kind of close these things up. So once again, close holes, and there we go. And let's go to the legs, and you can do the same thing here. I'm going to show on double sided so you can see what's going on, and I'll just hit close holes, and that will be closed up for us as well. Okay, so that's a nice starting point here. All right, we have ourselves basically blocked out in terms of the overall pieces. I'm just going to come over here and change my material to ZBrush paint, and I'm just going to start throwing on some basic color tones that are going to work for me here. So again, just to kind of get us a head start so we can start seeing this character in terms of how he's going to look. I'm going to grab the arms here, fill that object. I'm going to go to the face right now and just fill that for now. And let's go to the legs, and you can see here these legs have this kind of this yellowish color, so I'm going to grab that yellow tone. I'm going to fill, and if I go here to polyframe, you can see again I can just Control Shift click on the legs, Control Shift click a second time and hide them. I'm going to hide the 2 feet. Now if I Control Shift click and drag, I can inverse my visibility, and now I'm going to choose a brown and fill that, and I can just Control Shift tap to bring everything back. I'll go back to the torso here, Gonna throw some yellow on there. If I go here to polyframe, you can see I can, if I want, Control Shift click on the shoulders, switch my color back to that brown and fill that. Again, just to kind of get myself started, I can go back to the legs, Control Shift click on the pelvis, right there, right, and fill that with brown. Again, just to kind of get me an idea, right? So here's the face. If I hit Shift F to take a look at the face here, I'm just going to really quickly Control Shift click on that part. I'm going to Control Shift click on it again to hide it and hide the lips. This part here is going to be largely yellow, but that's fine. Now I'll just Control Shift click and drag to inverse this, hover over the skin to sample that with the C key, fill that, okay, and then bring that back. And then the eyes, of course, I'm just going to go with white. But at least now we can kind of start getting a feel for what's going on. I can even go to the arms here, hit Shift F, and you can see here I can just Control Shift click on the upper arms here, then Control Shift click on it a second time to hide it, hover over that brown, hit C to sample it, fill object, right? So now, again, I'm just kind of like, I want to kind of start getting a feel for how this guy's going to look. I can also just get a head start on the face, hold down Control, go to my mask lasso, and just kind of come in here and start throwing on some dark color here. It's not quite black, but it's close. So I can start getting the feel for basically what I'm looking at. It looks goofy, but I can start, as I'm starting to block this out now, I'll get a better idea. Okay, so part of the reason why I wanted to fill him with that color is just to see how far we have to go. We have to go quite a bit, right, to get there. So we're going to just slowly begin to bulk him up a little bit. And we're going to keep him low res for now. So I'm going to go here to my inflate brush. The inflate brush is a great way just to kind of start building out shapes here. I'm going to start basically in the chest area. Don't get too crazy, don't make it too big yet, but we need to kind of widen his torso a little bit. I'm going to go here to the back and kind of inflate the lats a little bit here as well. I'm going to go to, he's got very large shoulders, so we're going to come here and just start inflating this to kind of really bulk that up. Okay, kind of like this. And just kind of get my move brush now, I can kind of just actually widen this whole torso a little bit here. Okay, bring these shoulders out a little bit. And I'm going to need to move the arms. So I'm going to go to the arms, hit the W key, and I'm going to hold down Alt so I can move my move tool here. I'm actually going to pull these out a little bit, give him a wider stretched torso. That way now I can get the shoulders and kind of pull them out a little bit more. All right. So I'm going to use my move brush and pull clay. And again, with the move brush, if you hold down the Alt key and tap and drag from left to right, you can actually pull clay toward the camera. All right. So that's kind of what I'm doing here. Let's go back down to the legs now. I'm going to widen the waist a little bit. Go to my inflate brush and let's start inflating the thighs because he's got some pretty big thighs. I'm going to get the hamstrings here. But again, don't just indiscriminately start inflating. You want to look at where the muscle groups are, right? So he's got a big thigh area here. He's got one right here in the middle. He's got the inner thigh muscle and he's got the inside of the leg, which is a little tough to get to. But I'm just going to come in here and start bulging that up a little bit. He's got very large calves, so we're going to come in here on the inside, right in the back, and widen the ankles a little bit. We want just everything to be a little bit more bulky, but not indiscriminately so. It needs to make sense, so you can't just start just making everything look like it's made of bubbles, right? You want to kind of actually take your time and shape these muscle groups in accordance with what you see there. It's too low res for a lot of stuff, but you can get a lot done. Let's go to the arms now and do the same thing. Again, don't go overboard. It's tempting to go overboard with things like the bicep, but there's nothing crazy about them. The triceps are pretty big. They're going to do a lot of the work here. The forearms, again, look at it's kind of hard to see, but the outside here is pretty big, but the inside is a lot more of a heart-shaped thing going on here that we want to get. Let's get to the wrists and inflate those a little bit. We don't want the wrists to seem too thin because it's going to make everything else seem ridiculous by comparison. So the hands, just a little inflate just to kind of buff them up a little bit. Get my move brush and I want to kind of like look at the bicep from the side and kind of make this a little bit more straight. Don't do that. That's not really the way these muscles work. It's tempting to try and make it look like Popeye, but that's not the way they look, and they kind of look ridiculous when you try that. So, all right, so that's a better starting point. Let's go up here to the actual face, and we're going to select the face here, and we need to push this part of the face in. The ears are almost non-existent because of the mask, kind of like pushing them into the face here. But we're going to start by kind of giving him a little bit more of a mean look here. So come up here, get the brows, and kind of, again, his eyes are not nearly so so wide as this. Now again, you hold down Control and mask out with the lasso, the top brow, for example, and then, you know, bring that part up. Control tap to invert that, then you can bring that brow down a little bit. Okay, you want the jaw to be very square, so I'm going to grab that jaw and kind of pull that out a little bit here. Okay, the head we're going to kind of just round out a little bit more at the top. Right, and again, like we have to, obviously we have to do a lot of things with regard to the mask and that kind of thing, which we'll do. Let's just give ourselves a little bit more of a flesh tone here, because it looks a little bit weird like that. Okay, I mean, it looks weird anyway, but still we're getting better. So let's go here to the traps again. I'll get my move brush and kind of, oops, don't want to fatten the face. I want to keep the face nice and relatively thin, but we want to mask that out so you can kind of bulk him up a little bit more. And again, we might need to move those arms out even more just to kind of get them apart from the body. Okay, it's definitely getting better. We'll go to the legs again, take a look at it from the side. We'll go to solo mode from the side. Maybe I have to go to inflate. Maybe I gotta bring that middle muscle out a little bit more. Don't forget the knees, so it's gonna bring the knees out, and a little bit more of the calf, a bit more hamstring here. Okay. All right, so I think that we're looking better now in terms of the overall proportions. I think I'm going to go to his face and push that in a little bit. I'll kind of shorten it a little bit too. This is going to look a little bit weird, but again, once we get the mask set up, it'll look much better. Just playing around with the overall shape right now, though. Let's get the neck in there a little bit more. Get the chin jutting out a little bit. Okay, get a little snarl. All right, cool. All right, so let's start blocking out the rest of the parts that we need to have in here before we start doing more. Like, let's bring in the belt and then start with the helmet mask stuff, and just so we have all of our pieces, right? So in my sculpt tool palette, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to insert a cylinder. This is going to be for the belt. So just going to kind of choose roughly that kind of orangish red color, something like this. I think it's actually usually a deeper red, so I'm just going to bring it down a little bit more like that. Move it toward the red a little more, something like that. Okay, I think it's more that color typically, but I could be wrong. Just make it more toward the orange. And I'm going to scale this down here, bring it straight up. Make sure you move it straight up. Right, if you start using the white arrows, it might not be centered, and you kind of want to keep this in the center since he is a symmetrical person, at least at this point, and we want to kind of keep it that way. So, going to try and keep the belt relatively uniform here, because it is a belt. It's not going to be too bendy. So basically, typically what I try and do is make the belt just dictate what the rest of the body does, right? So I'm going to put the belt where it needs to be, and then go to the body here, and with my move brush, push and pull to kind of make them line up better. Because once you start moving a belt like the cylinder around and trying to make it conform, it's going to look a little bit weird, because again, it's a thick leather belt. It's not going to be that flexible. It might have a little bit of bend to it, but for the most part, you kind of want to make sure that the belt is kind of the boss here. I'm going to go to the belt and hit fill object so it stays that color. At least that way, now when I start building up the body, I can kind of get a better feel for exactly where I have to stop. I'm going to grab here and get the lats and really pull those out a little bit more, because I think he has a much broader V-shaped back here. So just do that really quick. Okay, and the good thing is, because it's not part of the arms, they can kind of overlap a little bit. I don't have to worry about like accidentally messing up the arms as I do that. All right, so we have the belt blocked in. Let's come in here on the face and let's start thinking about how we're going to do the mask. Just because, again, it's better to get a feel for the overall silhouette when everything's there, right? So the way this this mask part is, it's kind of, again, it's kind of like a little wing that comes off the face, right? So let's take a look at that. I'm going to go to polyframe and look at this this face here. And what I want to do is I actually want to kind of make something that kind of conforms to the face and actually incorporates the face part, because it does go right over his eyes, right? So let's duplicate this torso. I'm going to go to solo mode, and I'm going to isolate the parts that I want. So I'm going to hold down Control and Shift and click on the head part. I'm going to Control Shift click on it a second time to hide it and bring in the eyes. All right, and yeah, that should be pretty good. So I'm going to Control Shift click and drag now. That'll inverse the visibility, and now I can come up here and just hit Delete Hidden, because this is all going to be about the eye part. Obviously it comes up here and around the side, so I don't need some things. So I have to kind of start hiding the things I don't want. And I'm going to do that by using the selection tools, the same thing we've been using, that Control and Shift. But I'm going to change this from the select rectangle to a selection lasso. So hold down Control and Shift and click on the selection rectangle button and choose lasso. Now I'll go here straight from the side, and I want to hide the stuff I know I do not want. So I'm going to hold down Control and Shift and Alt, all three modifying keys. I'm going to come in here and just get rid of everything below the light purple thing right there, like this. Okay. Now I might want some of these back, so if I Control Shift click and drag out here in space, it'll inverse the visibility. And if I kind of hide these, it'll send them back to the others, right? So Control Shift click and drag again, and now I just have this. Okay, I'm going to hit Delete Hidden. Now I'm going to start getting rid of more. I'm going to hold down Control Shift and Alt. I'm going to hide this part here from the front. I can hold down Control Shift and Alt, and I can kind of pretty much get rid of this stuff right here. Okay, and I'm going to go from the side view here and get rid of all of this. So this is what I'm keeping right here. It looks ridiculous, I know. Let's hit Delete Hidden. Now I also want to get rid of the actual eye sockets, because obviously he needs to be able to see through this. So I have to kind of get my camera angle in a good angle here, hold down Control Shift and Alt, and I want to make sure I just get rid of those little guys right there. Okay, that's what I want to get rid of. Now I'm going to go up here and hit Delete Hidden, and again, this kind of comes, I think it kind of comes across the face. So I'm going to grab these little points and just pull them down so that they are kind of more straight across here, like this. So what I want to do now is I want to clean this up a little bit, obviously, right? So I'm going to hold down Control and get my mask lasso here. I'm going to mask out the eye openings, okay? And I want to come here and I want to go here and hold down Control, mask out that little area right there. That's it. All right. So now I'm going to come down here and choose Polish by Features, and it's going to polish and clean up everything but the areas that I masked out, so that they're not going to get messed up. Okay, I can lightly smooth this if I want to, just kind of clean it up a little bit. But you can see by doing that, let's just fill this here, I can kind of get that shape roughed in. Okay, so we start with this mask here. I have to do a little bit of shaping and adjustments here, because I want to make sure that I get rid of this stuff right here, because it kind of comes down, I think, into almost two parts, right? So we're going to kind of get rid of that. Probably this whole little guy right here. So we're just continuing with the mask here. But I want to make sure I have enough here. So let's go ahead and Delete Hidden again. I want to make sure I mask out that little point. I want to make sure I mask out the eye sockets here. I don't want to have them get too messed up. Then polish this again. And the more you polish, the more it'll kind of smooth it out. But again, depending on what you're going for here, that's kind of a mixed blessing. So something like that is fine. I'm going to clear this mask. Now, obviously, what I need to do is make this kind of bow out more. So I'm going to go to my Move tool, hold down Alt, and I'm going to move this so that it's kind of more in line with the mask here. You can see here it's way out of whack. I'm going to hit F to kind of frame up my little guy here, and you can see here if I look at it from the front, it's way the heck down here. So let's make sure it's where it needs to be. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key and kind of put it where it needs to be now. And then go to my gear. I'm going to try and use my bend curve. I'm going to give myself 3 little dots here so I can kind of grab this and essentially get out of solo mode now so I can see what I'm doing. and essentially get myself started with the shape. Okay, and the problem with that is it's messing up the eye socket, so can't do it that way. I'm going to mask out the eye socket and then just get my move brush nice and big and just do it the old-fashioned way. Sometimes, you know, you try and get too fancy, and it works better if you just you know, just earn it. So from the top here, I can kind of push this in. Use my move tool, maybe hold down Alt and move it a little bit so it kind of goes back this way. Clean my mask, bring this out a little bit, and I can adjust this. Again, we're not stuck with whatever we're given here. We can always just adjust this. It's still just clay, so I can kind of pull this out. I can kind of mask out this little outer edge here and then smooth it a little bit. This gets a little bit wonky in here, so we have to kind of, you know, fix it. Get in there and kind of do the dirty work and fix that around a little bit. Okay, let's make sure that this comes in to right about there. Now we're going to remesh this, obviously. Whenever you do polish by features, it always does it always does a number on the topology. So, but all I'm doing here really is looking at the overall shape and making sure I'm okay with it. Okay, so here maybe I'll kind of move this down a little bit, move this in. I'm going to mask out this outer part and then just grab my move brush and pull it like this. Trying to unmask this area so I can move it. There you go. Okay. So I just want this to look a little better from different perspectives here. I'm going to mask out the bottom point, the top point, the eye sockets, then do another polish, and that's going to kind of really clean that up a little bit. Okay, that's way better. Now I'm going to come here and hit ZBrush with same, and then hopefully we'll get a decent look. Sometimes you don't. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to come up here to geometry, and I'm going to turn off this smooth modifier and then hit divide. What it's going to do is going to divide it but not smooth it out. So now if I hit delete lower, you're going to see I've gotten a little bit more here. And now let's see if this does any better if I ZBrush. And it does a lot better. It just remeshes it, and it kind of retains the shape a little bit more faithfully. It still gets a little bit weird here, so I'm going to just remesh it a second time. Sometimes the second time you remesh it, it gets a little bit better. And you can see there how, you know, it's definitely a lot nicer. Got some weirdness here where it's not even connected anymore. So let's see if I undo back and figure out. See, it wasn't connected there either. So so we gotta do something about that. So I have to undo back, unfortunately, and divide, delete lower, remesh it same, and this time it keeps it. Sometimes you have to just you know, you have to give it a few tries. And it works okay sometimes, but you know, you never know. See, sometimes we lose it, sometimes you don't. I'm going to turn on detect edges. Over here in my geometry tab, you can open this up, and if you hit detect edges, it might do a better job. It might not. You just never know. So I'm just going to keep trying, but I think it's okay. It's just, I just don't like the way it looks, but I guess I shouldn't worry too much about that. All right, so now I have this, and I want to make this thick. Right now it's paper thin. So let's first here just do a quick polish by features. I'm going to mask off the edge here, mask off this point, do a quick polish by features to kind of clean it up a little bit. Actually, I want to make sure that this little part here is nice and pointy as well. So I'm going to go to solo mode. I'm going to mask out this little point and then do another polish by features, clean my mask, and then I'm going to turn off the edge. I'm going to try this one more time. Just again, every once in a while, you just can't really predict what it's going to do, but that feels better. All right. So anyway, there we go. You can see here it's a little off. So I'm going to get my move brush and just going to push this in and adjust it a little bit. But this is the big variable, is the mask. Everything else is pretty straightforward. So now I'm going to come here, go to polyframe so you can see this. And I'm going to go over here to dynamic subdivision and open this up. So this is in geometry. I'm going to go to dynamic subdivision, and if I turn on dynamic, it's going to make it look smooth, and I don't really want that. What's happening when you turn this on, it's showing you what it will look like if you subdivide it 2 times. And you know when you subdivide it, it gives that little smooth modifier. So I'm going to turn this subdivision level down to 0. So hitting dynamic right now is doing nothing. What I want to do when I turn on dynamic is give it some thickness. So I'm going to give my thickness slider and crank it up a little bit. Now if I turn dynamic on and off, you can see it's giving it thickness or not. So I want to keep that thickness. right? Maybe I'll give it even a little bit more just to kind of, there you go. Now if I want to keep that, just hit apply. So now it's actually there. I can hit fill object so it stays that color. And so now I actually have this stuff on my model. Okay, it's actually part of the guy, and I can just come in here, get my move tool here, and maybe I was going to kind of like push this into the face a little bit more. And you know, I can of course adjust the shape and adjust the overall look of it at any time. I'm going to go to the head now, and so I'm not confused on what I'm seeing. I'm going to Control Shift click on the top of the head here. I'm going to mask out what's below it, and I'm going to sample that yellow and throw it on there so I'm not confused by what I'm seeing. That way I can see whether the head's poking through, and I can just hold down, I can just shift I can smooth the head down a little bit. But now we have the mask parts, the dark mask parts of the model here on there, and any part of the head that's poking through, we're just going to, you know, push it back, right? We have to do more. We have to make more of a helmet, but this is the part that was probably the most tricky. So now that we have that part kind of blocked in and ready to go, we can of course come in here and do any number of changes to it to make it feel, you know, more extreme or whatever. But I think it's fine like this. So we're going to just keep moving. Alright, so I think it makes sense to start really working on some of the anatomy here because he's just kind of a big blocky dude right now, and I want to start mostly on the torso and see what we can do. So I'm going to subdivide his torso just once at this point, and for now I'm going to turn the paint off just so I can see what I'm doing a little bit more easily. And I want to kind of start thinking about where the muscle groups are going to be. So I'm going to be using obviously that picture as my guide. So I'm going to use my damp standard brush really quickly just to kind of rough in the lines. You want to see like where the muscles overlap. The shoulder muscles are overlapping the chest here, right? We have this clavicle area, right, that kind of like sets in here. Okay, we have the abs here. We have the kind of like the rib cage kind of comes this way. Then we have the serratus thing, the kind of the little rib cagey looking dudes over here, the lats. Okay, and then on the back, okay, even though you don't see that back in that picture, the picture that we have as a guide, it's you know, it gives us a back view as well. So you want to kind of start thinking about the overall muscle groups there as well. So it's kind of coming a little bit of a V shape there, and then kind of coming around this way and bring the shoulders up a little bit. So the more you start kind of like blocking in these types of shapes, at least for me, the easier it gets to kind of to start shaping them a little bit more. Okay, so even though we're at a very low resolution here, I'm going to go to my inflate brush and just kind of now that I've kind of put those lines here, I can kind of start to build up with the inflate brush a little bit more keenly what, you know, where these muscle groups are going to be. So I'm just going to, like, instead of just going randomly, I'm going to put them where, you know, where it makes the most sense, right? And I'm going to come up here to the face, and I want to kind of push this in a little bit. He's got a mask on, right? So there's going to be some separation here. There's going to be, it's right around the nose, and then it comes down this way. Okay. I can just actually even do a little bit of definition in the face as well, just to kind of get the, you know, that looking like it's got something going on here. I'm going to go to my clay build-up brush and just kind of build up some of the folds underneath the lip here. Okay, and now let's take a look here. I see I want to kind of get the sternocleidomastoid, I think it's called, and push in a little bit here. Right. Alright, so again, this is the starting point. Let's hit Control D, which is the shortcut to subdivide one more time. And those lines we put in there are going to give us a nice little indication of where we're going. So I'm going to keep clay buildup here. Clay buildup is kind of a messy brush, and that's kind of the point. I want to start kind of like building this up. I want to kind of build up the rib cage here, coming down, coming away. I want to start building in the abs here. I might need to lower the belt just a little bit because we're missing some some abdominal stuff here. So I'm going to come here and bring in the obliques, little side muscles here, and build up some more of that rib cage. Okay, now I can go back to my damn standard brush and kind of start re-establishing some of the little the musculature here. Now again, I'm not going to try and do this exact. I'm not going to try and meet it 100%. I'm just going to use this as a guide in terms of the overall anatomy here, the overall feel, I should say. Right, so I'm just going to kind of build that up a little bit, and then maybe carve in a little bit here, but I don't want to feel like I'm carving in too much in the way of muscles. I just want to kind of use that as a guide. Okay. Oh, geez. I was using clay buildup. Clay buildup here. Let's bring that out. Bring out some of this muscle here. And again, clay buildup is really cool. It's kind of, it builds up nicely, as the name implies, and it's a little bit like rough. And again, it feels a little more like muscle fibers. So I'm gonna come in here and dig in a little bit here to kind of establish the muscle separation here, if I can. Again, I don't pretend to be an anatomical wizard, but I'm just going by what I'm looking at here. Okay. So I'm going to make this kind of come down like that. Okay. There you go. So I think we're getting somewhere there. And I'm going to go with my damn standard brush here. I'm just going to kind of do a little bit in the sternum area here and just kind of like carve in little indications there so it's not perfect, and get clay build up and just kind of build that around. So we have a little bit more of that going on here. Okay. Damn standard to kind of carve in again to kind of establish the separation between the shoulder parts and the torso. So I'm just going to mask out the torso and just inflate the shoulder a little bit over top of that. Right, that's something here. Let's come up here to the face, and I'm going to use my hit B for brush, J. I'm going to choose this brush called the J cut brush. J cut brush is like a different, like a subtle version of the damn standard brush. I'm going to hold down the Alt key and basically pull out a line for the lips to kind of give them a ridge like this. My standard brush, hold down Alt, kind of give him that little filtrum there. Go back to my damn standard brush and hold down Alt to kind of build up the little ridge of where the mask is going to be. Okay, give myself a little indication there of where that's going to be. Hold down Alt and kind of pull that out there like this. Again, I'm just blocking in the overall idea here right now. Okay, there's going to be some like lines, like helmet lines right there. All right. Get my move brush, maybe give them a little more of a snarl. Now I'm going to come here and from the side view, I'm getting a little bit high on time here. I'm just going to kind of just carve in a little bit more there. Okay. That's cool. I'll bring the color back just so you can kind of see where we are with this, and we're getting along. So I'm going to kind of stop this here. Let's do the arms now. So let's just kind of work our way down. So again, the arms are very low res, so let's Control D, which is a shortcut subdivide. And when you do that, again, they get a little bit smaller because they smooth out a little bit. So we're going to just start a little bit here. I'm going to get my damn standard brush again and just start kind of establishing the separations between the bicep here. There's actually a little muscle in between the two here, the bicep and the tricep. Let's go to solo mode here. I'm going to kind of come in here, and bicep is very much like a horseshoe shape here, so it kind of comes in and then out. And on the tricep, I'm going to go here to my standard brush just because it's too low res for anything else, and I'm just going to kind of just block out the little other horseshoe shape, which is the tricep. So just kind of build this up. I said the bicep is a horseshoe shape too because it kind of comes down like a U in my mind anyway. So I'm going to kind of build this out a little bit here. The elbow is actually kind of part of this paint job, which is kind of useful. You can kind of see what's going on here. And the forearm muscles, we don't really see a whole lot of them in the picture. They're kind of implied, but you can see some of it here. And it's kind of like a heart shape. So there's a muscle that kind of comes across this way, and then across this way, and then you get damn standard brush and kind of almost have a little V shape here, generally speaking, but mostly because of this one on the outside. I'm going to do a little bit of a cut in here and do a standard brush and kind of pull out some clay there just to kind of block this in. We're going to not worry too much about the fingers because he's probably going to have his hands in fists anyway. So whatever we do to the fingers it's probably going to get a little bit lost in the fist anyway. I'm going to just use my inflate brush just to kind of round this out a touch. Let's hit Control. Now I'm just going to, even though it doesn't matter here, this part up here, I'm going to hit C to sample the skin tone, mask off that top, and then invert that mask and then fill it so that I don't have that color up top there because it really wouldn't make sense. Let's hit Control D. Now we have a little bit more to work with, but not a whole lot still. Definitely better though. I'm going to use my damn standard brush again just to kind of establish the definition of where these little muscle groups are going to be. And then I can kind of come in there after the fact and inflate or build up around them, right? So just kind of giving myself kind of a visual clue as to where these parts are going to be here, something like that. All right, and now again, just come in here with my inflate brush and just kind of build up in between those carvings I just did, right? Something like this. We're still very low res, only 22,000 points, so it's not going to be a whole lot of visible stuff. You're going to turn my floor off, and you can see here, I want to kind of like have the muscles to kind of come back through here around. Maybe kind of build out the forearm bone a little bit here as well, just so it's not quite so flat. And build that up a little bit more. Okay, so there we go. Let's hit Control D again. So now we have more points. I'm gonna use a different brush instead of clay build up. I'm gonna hit B for brush and then C, and then you're gonna see there's a brush just called clay. Now it has RGB turned on. I'm gonna turn it off. But clay it's an ugly brush, and that's kind of what I want. I want this because it leaves behind little bumps, and for muscles that I want to feel are a little bit like, you know, they're striated. I kind of want that, and I sometimes I use this clay brush for stuff like that just to kind of get so it doesn't seem too clean. I just want to kind of take advantage of the fact that this brush leaves behind some irregularities and you know, work that way. So it's going to come and use this brush. You don't need to, of course. You can use whatever brush works for you, but I'm going to use the clay brush. I just like the fact, like I said, sometimes it just feels like it's a little imperfect, and it's kind of useful for overlapping muscles where you kind of want it to feel a little bit like, you know, not everything is perfectly smooth and clean. Go back to my damn standard brush and just kind of again reestablish some of these definition elements here. Then you can go back to regular old clay build-up as well. So just going back and forth between the brushes to kind of establish the different muscles here. A little smooth here and there is not a bad idea, just to kind of remove some of the obvious brush strokes. Okay, I'm going to, now again, in the picture he's got a little bit like of a stylized look. If I hit B and then J and go to my J cut brush, I can hold down the Alt key and kind of like bring in like a line like right here, which kind of like gives us this like hard edge. Just kind of like a little bit of a stylization that it seems like they have there. They kind of have like these, some of these lines have a little bit more of a, I'm going to fill this with this color here so I can see what I'm doing. But I can kind of build in the forearm muscles here a little bit more. It's easier to do when I can see what I'm doing. Kind of build this up here a little bit. Same standard to kind of carve in the separations a touch. Right. Going to use my clay builder brush with Alt to kind of push in just a tiny bit, just to kind of knock that forearm bone back. But you can see it's starting to look kind of rough here and kind of bulky, which is kind of what we're going for. I'm going to inflate this area up a little bit more right on the inside. Maybe I'll go here with damn standard and hold down Alt and just kind of draw in a little hint of like a vein, you know, running across the forearm and the bicep here, just to kind of again establish that this is a human. Again, I'm ignoring the hands right now, totally ignoring the hands, and that's okay. I just want to kind of get a feel for that. And now I'm just going to go hit to P and then B, I'm sorry, and then P, choose my paintbrush. I'm going to go to a slightly darker, more orangish color, and choose an alpha of fuzzy, tone down my RGB intensity, and turn off lazy mouse. I'm just going to come in here and just start kind of throwing in some darker tones, basically painting in the shadows, just to kind of give myself, again, a clearer indication of where the definition is. So sometimes this is a cool way to cheat a little bit, just kind of like paint in where the recessed areas would be, right? Just kind of get yourself some free definition that way. If you need to get the actual color back, of course, just hover over the part that you didn't paint, hit C to sample that, and you can kind of knock that back a little bit. Okay, just wanted to kind of get a little bit of that in there, like so. Okay, come up here to render, and under preview AO, turn on occlusion. You see how it kind of like goes in there and darkens all the shadowy areas. I'm going to turn down the intensity a little bit, and maybe the radius a little bit too, but it just kind of gives you some clearer definition, which is cool. Nice little way to cheat again. So let's go back here and just pull the arm up so it kind of fits in there. Okay, there we go. So we worked on the arms. We got them blocked out a little bit as well. He's going to be wearing gloves, obviously, so we can kind of just mask that part out, invert it, and throw that dark color in there again. And now we're getting on our way. All right, so we did the torso and the arms. These, our first pass at them. Now we're going to do the same thing with the legs here. So I'm going to go here, and I want to kind of like go to my move tool. I want to mask out the pelvis here, and just go to my move tool. Maybe just spread them out a little bit like that. Rotate them in a little bit like that. Okay, so just like with the other thing, I'm going to solo mode. I hit Control D to give myself a little bit more points here, and just like before, I'm going to go here. I'm going to actually turn off hide my paint by hitting my little paint bucket there, paintbrush, I should say. And again, I want to kind of like just give myself an indication of where the major muscle groups of the leg are. And it's kind of like feels like a teardrop shaped muscle on the inner thigh. Then it kind of comes up like this. You have like this little V-shaped one right here that kind of comes into the groin. Then we have this other one that kind of the big outer thigh muscle here that kind of comes up like that, right? At least that's how I can see it right now anyway, and that's what seems to be the case. And we kind of have this come around the back here. We have the hamstring. On the inner leg, there's a muscle that kind of comes down this way. Okay, so just blocking in those shapes, and again, the shin. He's going to have boots, but the shin bone here, and again we have the kind of the double calf muscle here in the back, like that. Okay, again, just giving ourselves a head start with this. The knee is something that kind of like, I'll hold down Alt and kind of pull this out here, and then just push in on either side here to kind of get that sticking out like that. All right, this is what I want to start with. Okay, I'm going to come in here and just kind of increase the groin a little bit here, but now I'm going to go to my inflate brush and do the same thing. I'm going to come here and just kind of inflate the areas that I sectioned off, just to kind of like establish their separateness. If that makes any sense, all right? Like that. Okay, I'm going to kind of get a little bit more up the top here as well. And now I hit Control D to subdivide one more time. And again, it really does suffer a little bit when it comes to smoothing out a little bit here. So I'm going to use my J-cut brush, the one that we used before without Alt this time. It's kind of a more subtle version of the damn standard brush, just to kind of like establish these little lines here a little bit more sharply, but without being too intense. Okay. Like that. I'll go back to damn standard now, kind of push in the back of the knee. Let's go back to, I'm going to go to my clay build-up brush here and kind of build up on either side here. We have this kind of this muscle in the back, and then we have this kind of side support here, like this. Again, I'm just making this up as I go for the most part. I think this is what it is, but I could be wrong. Just kind of going by what I think is there from what I see. You don't need to worry too much down here, right? Because this is actually going to be the boot. but here we can just come in and build up a little more clay in these areas, just to again like really emphasize, because he's a short character. I think he's like, compared to the other superhero type characters, he's kind of short in stature, so we want there to be kind of, his legs are kind of large in comparison in terms of like the length. Okay, you can get the glutes in there. Okay, so something like this. Okay, a little light smoothing just to kind of knock some of that back, and we'll turn the paint back on. Okay, so we can see basically where we're getting here. And again, he actually is going to have yellow legs down that part, right? So you can see here, again, we're getting much closer to the kind of musculature we want here. We need to kind of come here to the top, get our move brush here, and kind of basically establish more of a torso. In fact, I might just grab the whole thing and just slide it down a little bit, just to give us a little bit more room. Not much though, because again, he's like I said before, he's kind of short, so I don't want to kind of make him too big. But I just want to make sure that the oops, what the heck happened there? Let's bring this down a little bit here, and then just pull it out with my move brush. Okay. Let's go here back to the legs and just build up around the waist a little bit here, because this looks a little slight, so let's kind of build it up a little bit more. Don't want to kind of like, it doesn't taper in quite so much, so I'm going to build it out a little bit. And then we'll just grab the belt and we'll just kind of widen it a little bit here. Scale it down vertically so we have a little bit more room. Alright. I think that'll work for us. Actually, I think I can probably get that belt down a little bit more. And then get the torso and just pull that down a little bit more too. Give myself some more room. I think part of what's throwing me here on the legs is the paint job. So just want to kind of make sure that stays, that's a little bit more brown there. But I just think we need to widen these a little bit here. And my move tool, bring this back down a little bit. I'll move those legs back up. I think that I shouldn't have pulled them down. Alright, here we go. Alright, anyway, that's a fine start. Let's go here and make sure that the belt is is where it needs to be. We'll just push the waist in a little bit here. Alright. Alright, so we can live with this for now, I think. Just gonna pull this back down. Alright, anyway, we've gone through our first pass of all the things, which is good. We now need to start working on building things like the boots, and you know, increasing the detail on the mask and that kind of stuff. So now we're going to start making the boots. Now the boots are basically going to become a variation of the legs themselves. So I'm going to come here into the legs and just duplicate them. So now I have copies. I'm going to go to solo mode here, and I want to go to my geometry tab and go back down to level 1. So I'm looking at the lowest res. I'm going to go to polyframe so I can see the actual faces here. You can see that the boot actually is pretty low on the leg. So I'm going to go here to my side view, hold down Control and Shift, and change this to my selection lasso. Now I'm just going to hold down Control, Shift, and Alt so that I can basically remove the parts that I want to keep. So I'm going to go to about maybe like here. Okay, something like that. Now I'm going to Control, Shift, tap, and drag, and that's going to inverse the visibility. And that's all I want. So I'm just going to go up here and hit Delete Hidden. Now before I do, I may as well come over here and just delete my higher subdivision levels, so I don't have to worry about that. And I hit Delete Hidden, because I'm kind of starting from scratch here, right? So I'm going to fill this with just dark color here. And now I'm going to build that boot roughly. And you can see here, again, it's got kind of like a V shape in the front. It's also in the back. So let's come up to here and just tap on here so I can use that as my camera. And basically I'm going to kind of get rid of some of these little guys here as well. So I'm going to look at this from the front, hold down Control and Shift, and I still have my selection lasso. If I hold down Alt again, I'm going to kind of come in here and just remove some of these points. So I'm going to also remove this little face here. Okay, something like that. Okay, now you can get rid of these little ones too. Again, whatever little point you go over, the faces connected to that point will go away. All right. So I think I want to bring this little row back. So if I Control Shift Tap and drag, you can see I can just see the ones I've hidden. And now I want to kind of get my camera in such a way as I can Control Shift and Alt and hide these and send those back. Now if I Control Shift Tap and drag again, now I'm back with this. That's what I want. So I'm going to hit Delete Hidden. What I'm going to do now is kind of clean this up a little bit. So maybe I actually want this to kind of come more to a point on the side. So maybe I want to kind of get rid of some of these here. So I'm going to hold down Control Shift and Alt again and just kind of get rid of, say, these guys here. Maybe this one. So basically I'm going to like taper it like that toward the side. I'm going to try to do the same thing over here. I'm going to hide these two. I'm going to hide these. Something like this. So again, I'm just trying to kind of like give myself the raw materials for a taper, and that's probably okay, kind of like this, right? So I'm just going to get my move brush and just push this down. Okay, so now I'm going to once again delete hidden. So I'm going to choose a point. I'm going to choose this point. I'm going to mask out that little point here. I'm going to mask out that little point here, and I'm also going to mask out this little point and this little point. So I'm going to kind of make them overlap like this. Hold down Control and just mask out those two. Okay, and I'm also just going to mask out the feet. So why am I doing that? Because now if I do a polish, it's going to polish everything but the points that I masked out, right? I'm actually going to mask out a little further down too, so nothing happens to that. So there you go. So now I got to kind of, now I have this little more pointed. Now it looks silly, but that's all I want is to get that set up. Now I can get my move brush and just start kind of like widening these a little bit more, right? Okay, I can get out of solo mode so I can see what I'm doing a little bit here. I'm going to kind of just bring this out like this. Now I can probably turn, yeah, I'm gonna keep his original feet as like part of the boots probably, and then just kind of turn this into the little brown parts here. I don't know, we'll see. But I'm just kind of blocking this out right now. You can see here they kind of come way up to basically his knees, so I have to kind of get my move brush and pull this out. It's going to start getting a little bit rough because this is very low res, but that's okay. I'm just getting that started. I do want this to kind of become a lot deeper, so I'm going to hold down, go to solo mode here, and let's look at this from the top. I'm going to hold down Control and change this to my mask lasso. I'm going to lasso out the front half of these boots so that I can just grab the back part and pull that back, right, without having to worry about messing up the front part. And I'll Control Tap to invert my mask so I can pull the front part forward as well. Probably need to raise this whole thing up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down Control and mask out everything to about there. Go to my move tool, I'm going to hold down Alt and bring this down to about here, and then vertically I just grab this and just pull this up to kind of push everything up a little bit. Okay, kind of bring this out. And bring this in. And again, this looks ridiculous right now, but you know, it should look a little bit better once we remesh it and stuff. I'm just trying to block out the overall shape and just being okay with the fact that it looks a little bit goofy right now. All right, so now if I were to come down here and hit Z remesh with same, we'll see what we get. We might not get something very good at all. Actually, it works out pretty okay. Sometimes when you have low res and little points and you try and remesh it, it doesn't always work out very well. If I try and remesh it one more time, that works even better. So we're going to keep that. Okay, so I'm just going to lightly smooth just to kind of, you know, make that work a little bit better for me. And now I'm going to make this the dark brown part. The extra parts we're going to make separately. This is going to be kind of like the root boot, the boot root, as we say. Now I'm just going to go to my inflate brush and just inflate the bottom here a little bit. Basically, any part that's pushing through of the original leg, I can always just push it in, kind of like forget about it. But just kind of getting myself a little head start here by lightly inflating the boot so that it kind of comes out. I want the boot to have a nice flat sole. So again, I'm going to go to solo mode here, and I'm going to go Control Shift and Alt. I'm going to basically hide the bottom parts. Control Shift, tap and drag to invert that. I'm going to go to my Move tool, W, and I'll hold down the Alt key and move this down to the very, very bottom, and then scale this all the way down like this to flatten that out. I'm going to do a polish by features to kind of clean that up. And now I'm going to hit Control W. That's a shortcut to make a poly group out of these faces. Now when I Control Shift tap to bring everything back, we have this. And why am I doing that? Because now I'm going to do one more remesh. I'm going to come over here to my geometry and do it though. I'm not going to do it down here, because under ZBrush right here, we have the same button, but I want to turn on Keep Groups so it knows to maintain that same border, which is also down here. But the reason why I had to come over here is because I want to make sure it doesn't try and smooth that edge. So I'm going to turn Smooth Groups down to 0. So now, one more time, ZBrush. And now we have a remesh, and this is nice and clean. I don't know what happened with that little red guy. So I'm just going to Control Shift click on the purple to isolate this. Control Shift tap and drag. And I'll just hit Control W to make that their own poly group, and then I'll Control Shift tap to bring everything back. Okay, so now that I blocked out the basic shape of the boots, I'm going to actually essentially duplicate these again. I do want the actual dark brown boots to be separate boots, and then these little light brown thing to be kind of a separate part. So I'm going to come over here to my subtool palette and duplicate this. I'm going to isolate this one, and this one's going to be the actual under boot. So I'm going to hit Shift F, go to polyframe here. And I'm just going to come up here, hold down Control, Shift, and Alt with my selection lasso, and basically just get rid of all the crazy stuff. Like there, hit Delete Hidden. And now I'm going to mask out the bottom part of the boot, the part that's going to stay the boot. I'll turn off solo mode for a second and also hide the original boots. And now I'm just going to go to my Move tool and hold down Alt, hit my little orientation arrow to make it straight. I'm going to hold down Alt and move my tool to the top of that mask here, and I'm just going to scale this up so that it's tall enough to kind of be the boot. Now I'm just going to kind of pull this out on either side, pull this back. Again, I can hold down, I can mask out the front, pull this back, right? So it kind of covers the leg. There's not a whole lot to see here because the little ornamental part is going to do a lot of the work here. But I just want to have a basic boot here as well, just to kind of give me something to kind of have underneath of it. So these boots are a little bit ornate and I might not need all of this. I might end up like chopping off part of this, but I just want to have a basic boot underneath here that can serve essentially again as the base. Okay, so again, this is going to probably be a lot shorter than this, but it's going to look silly on its own. But I'm going to come to this one here, this my ornamental one here, and I'm going to fill that with a different brown. You're going to see that I need to kind of figure out where this part goes. So we're going to basically do a couple little parts here. So I'm going to get to my little ornamental part. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger than the boot itself. So I'm going to come down here to deformation and go to inflate and just inflate that a little bit. Maybe not quite so much. That might have been a little too crazy. Something like this. Like that. Okay, now I get my move brush and just pull the rest of this out by holding down the Alt key and tapping and dragging from left to right to kind of pull that toward the camera. Alright, so what I want to do now is basically remove the stuff I don't need. So you can see here, this kind of has like a strip right up the middle, and then it kind of goes off to the sides, and it comes back around to another strip on the back. So let's go to polyframe here and go to solo, and let's come here to the side view, actually move to the front, and I'm going to get rid of the stuff right here down the middle. So I'm going to hold down Control, Shift, and Alt, and I want to kind of get rid of all the stuff that is not a strip right down the middle. So I want to kind of decide, I want to kind of leave about 3 rows, sorry, 3 rows here. You can see how I accidentally got rid of the stuff I want to keep. So Control, Shift, tap, and drag to invert, hide those two. Control, Shift, tap, and drag to get back. So I definitely want to get rid of that. On the back though, I want to keep some of this. So I have to get Control, Shift, tap, and drag to inverse my visibility, so I can kind of get a feel for how many rows I need to keep. So I'm just chopping off the parts that I don't need. So that's enough on this side. I'm going to hit delete hidden before I forget. I don't need the white stuff on the bottom here, so I can Control Shift Tap on that to isolate it. Control Shift Tap and drag to invert, delete hidden. I'm just going to slowly whittle away what I don't need. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing here. I want to leave myself these nice 3 rows of faces here. Now, again, on the back though, by doing that, I've hidden some of the things I need to keep, so I need to kind of bring these back. I'm going to bring these guys back. And again, note that I'm doing a camera angle so I don't go through to the front. Okay, so this little row here I actually don't want. There you go, like that. Alright, so I know that I'm okay as far as that goes. I'll hit delete hidden so I don't mess that up. Now let's go on the side here. Now the side is going to be a little bit weird, so I'm going to just get my camera angle as best I can and start chipping away, Control Shift and Alt, chipping away at what I don't want. Now this little arc here on the side, it kind of widens a little bit here, so I know I'm going to be using the Polish by Features feature to kind of like, slowly widen that. So I don't care that it's a little bit weird in terms of like the stair-stepping nature of it. So I think that maybe these will be kind of cool, like that. Now while I'm working here, it's kind of hard to go through this side without messing up the other one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit X, turn symmetry off, and now I'm going to hide this entire one here, and then just hit delete hidden. It's easier to work on one and then just mirror it over. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to come here now and start kind of, again, whittling away at some of these faces here. I don't really know entirely exactly where I'm going to end up, but I think eventually it'll work itself out. I'm just trying to kind of give myself a little bit of a feeling of that kind of like up and down. Let's just keep that. Now again, I think I might want to get one of these back, so I'm going to Control Shift Tap and drag. Nope, I guess that's all I have. That's fine. Delete hidden. Alright, so now I'm going to mask out the top little points here. I'm going to mask out the little V crook here, so that stays. Okay, and I'll mask out the bottom part here because I don't need that to change at all. And now I'm going to do a Polish by Features again. You can see again, it's just going to clean it up. It's not perfect, but it's definitely, it's definitely workable, I think. Like this. Now this little area here could stand to be cleaner, so I'm going to mask out this little area, invert, polish. See how that kind of cleans it up a little bit? And do the same thing here. Mask out this little area, invert, polish. I don't want to lose my little corner though, so I'm going to make sure I mask that out. There we go. Alright, so it's just, again, it's just a nice quick way to clean up those edges. I can do the same exact thing here. I can mask out these, invert, keep that corner masked, polish, and do the same thing on this side. I'm just trying to clean up these lines a little bit. Okay, so now we have that. I'm going to remesh one more time with same. I can turn off key groups now. Don't need that anymore. That's a little crazy, but we'll try it one more time. Sometimes remeshing it a second time is better. Not wonderful, but geez, it's getting worse and worse. Alright, let's try half and see if it happens. Okay, we'll take what we can get. That's not terrible. Alright, so now if I get out of here, you can see basically I have this shape which is kind of like following the contours of my boot. And I can see now based on what I have, and this little face here, this little triangle, I don't want. So I'm going to Control Shift Alt. I'm going to hide these faces, then inverse my visibility, hide those guys, so that little triangle is left behind. So go back to this and delete hidden because I don't want that stupid triangle. Alright, so that's better. So now if I get out of polyframe, you can see here I can just start adjusting this a little bit so that it kind of conforms to the boot in a way that kind of makes sense. So I'm just going to nudge this a little bit here, a little bit here. And as I adjust this, I can kind of go back to the actual boots and kind of, adjust the parts that I don't want to see and bring out the parts that I do want to see. So basically I can kind of like make these two parts of the boots work together. So again, going to be some adjustments to some of this, but this is where I'm going to kind of stop the video here. Maybe I'll actually bring this up a little bit here, but get my little brown guy here and move this up a little bit. All right, so we're going to start finishing up the boots. I think we're going to go focus on our little boot cover here. If I hit Shift F, you can see how this looks. And what I want to do, first I'm going to kind of just do a little tweaking here. This little triangle is kind of similar to the other triangles that I don't particularly care for. So if you have something like this, again, you can get rid of it. Just Control Shift and Alt. I'm going to hide these. Then Control Shift, tap and drag in space to kind of invert the visibility, and that's the one I want to get rid of. So I'm going to hide this again, and then hit Delete Hidden. Now if I mask out this little area, and then Control Tap to invert, I can just do a quick polish, and it'll kind of smooth out that edge. Okay, so just the little triangles bother me, and they don't always work great. So I'm just going to get rid of that. All right, so anyway, now what I want to do is I want to make this thicker. Right now this is paper thin. If I turn off double-sided, you can see you can't even see it on the other side. So I need to make this thicker. And I'm going to do what's called an extrusion, which allows me to extrude or thicken this piece. So I'm going to go to Shift F or polyframe so I can see the wireframe here. And I'm going to go to a brush called the Z Modeler brush. We have not really used this brush, at least not in this project. This allows me to work on the component levels of points and edges and stuff. So hit B for brush, Z for Z Modeler, just choose Z Modeler. Now when I come in here with this brush, if I hover over a point, it's going to give me one little description. If I hover over an edge, it's going to give me a different description. If I hover over a face or a polygon, it'll give me a different description. So you have to kind of make sure you know what you're hovering over before we start doing things, because it will do a different thing depending on what we're hovering over at that time. Okay, so let's hover over a face or a polygon, and it's going to say QMesh a poly. What does that mean? The operation it would do is called QMesh, and the thing it would do it to is a single face or polygon. So if I tap and drag, you'll see this is what QMeshing does. It extrudes it. But I want to do a different type of extrude, but that's kind of what I want to do, but I want to do it to all of them, right? So I'm going to hover over a face here and then hold down the space bar on my keyboard. It's going to bring up a big menu of things. These are the different actions I can choose, and this is like the target, like what it's going to do it to. So the action I want is something called extrude. And the target is not a single polygon, but it's all polygons. So I'm going to do it to all of them. Okay. Now I'll hover over a face. You're going to see it's going to say extrude all polygons. And I want to extrude it. I want to give it some thickness, but I don't want to pull it out like this. I want to push it in, so that way it kind of like goes toward the leg. So I'm going to hold on. So I'm going to hover over a face and tap and drag and extrude that in like this. Okay. Now this looks like it's thick, but it actually is paper thin. I'm sorry, it's not paper thin, it's inside out. How do I know? Because I pushed it in. If I turn off double-sided, you're going to see it looks weird. It's got kind of like an inside-out look to it. So I need to kind of reverse or flip it. You're going to see right above double, there's a button called flip, and that's going to make that work for me now. Okay. Now, what I want to do is I want this thickness here to kind of extend like this does further into the boot. So if I go to polyframe, you can see here when I extruded those faces, the interior faces are a different poly group. They're green. So I can Control Shift click to isolate this poly group here. Now I'm going to turn on double side so I can see it again. What I want to do basically, I'm going to go to solo mode here. I want to take these faces here, these looped faces here, and pull them further toward the boot, kind of basically because you can see there's a gap in between. I want to kind of close that gap. So I'm going to hold down Control and mask out these lower faces like this. I'm going to do the same thing on this side, so I'm going to just mask this out. I'm not being overly careful. And now I'm going to Control Tap to invert that mask. Now if I now basically what I'm going to do is grab my move brush and just pull these in. We'll see how this ends up looking. I'm going to pull this in like this. I'm going to do the same thing over here and just pull these points in toward the boot. I don't know if this is going to work, but we're going to give it a shot. So I'm going to pull these faces in like this to make sure they kind of overlap. Now this one here I'm going to undo back because I want to make sure this is masked out. I only want to pull the outer edge here in toward the boot like this. Okay, kind of like this. Remember, you hold Alt and tap and drag from right to left and it'll push away from the camera. Okay. Now let's Control Shift Tap to bring everything back, and you can see basically by doing that to that green poly group here, I'm kind of pulling in the entire group of faces, so it kind of like fills that gap there. Now eventually I'm going to want to make this smooth, and I need to be able to do that without it getting too mushy, right? So if I hit D to kind of show me the dynamic subdivision mode, it's going to get a little soft, right? And I don't really want that. So I'm going to hit Shift D to go back to this. I want to make sure these edges stay sharp, and because if I hit Shift F, you can see they're different polygroups, I can tell ZBrush to essentially crease or sharpen or harden the edges of these polygroups. It's called creasing, and I'm going to go to my geometry menu to do that. So let's go up here to geometry, and you're going to see an option for crease, and you can see here's something called crease PG. Now I'm going to come here to this crease level. This basically is going to keep it hard and sharp for a number of, so no matter how many times I subdivide it, based on this crease level. So if I have it set to 15, if I crease this border so it stays sharp, when I subdivide it, even though when you usually subdivide it gets smooth, it'll keep it sharp for up to 15 subdivision levels, which is way high. I'm going to bring it down to, like, say 2. Then I'm going to hit crease polygroups border. You're not going to see anything change. If I go to polyframe though, you can look closely and see there's kind of like a little dotted line around that border there, telling me that that polygroup border has been creased. It's going to stay sharp. So now if I hit D, you see here that line stays nice and sharp, okay? And that's kind of what I'm going for. I want to keep that line sharp. Now if I were to subdivide this, if I were to go here to dynamic subdivision, you can see when I turn this on, it's showing me 2 levels of subdivision. If I go up to 3, it's going to start to get a little softer now, because that crease level is only going to keep it sharp for up to 2 subdivision levels, and then begin to smooth a little bit, which is kind of what I want. I can go to maybe crease level 3 to kind of keep it one more time, but I do want eventually it to be able to get a little less hard, right, in terms of the edges. So I'm just going to kind of like get, while it's in this mode, I can just kind of do a quick little adjustment with my move brush to kind of get the shape that I want. Kind of give it a little more of a whip feel to it, like that. Okay. And again, I can go here now to my boot, and you can see there's a couple little parts of this that are kind of, you know, showing, so I'm just going to push them away. And that's a pretty decent starting point, I think. Now you can see here with my little wings on the boots, they're a little off in terms of where the main line is in the back of the boot. So I'm just going to adjust this. Now remember, that's all fake, that smoothness. This is still pretty low res. I'm just showing myself how it would look if it were smooth. So I'm going to push it like this. Okay. And I think that's a decent start. So I'm going to come up here now, come down here and hit mirror. It's going to mirror it across. I'm going to say merge into one subtool across the x-axis. Yes. So now I have it on both feet, right? And now again, if I hit D, again, I'm going to get a nice smooth look or smooth preview of this. You can see there are some little parts here that I might need to adjust in terms of how it actually kind of looks with that little thickness, but it is easier to do that, I think, when you can see how it's going to look when smooth. So I'm just going to kind of adjust this a little bit. But yeah, now of course, don't forget to put symmetry on. It's really important. So I have to kind of mirror this a little bit and make sure it's all good. Okay, so I'm gonna hit X to make sure symmetry's on. So any changes I make now, I'll make sure they go on both sides. But that's a starting point for the actual boot part. We can actually do lots of cool little details to this as we move forward. But I just want to make sure that was set up. And now I'm going to go back to the actual boot. I know, we're still on the boots, but we're getting closer. I'm going to actually go to the actual boots now, not the boot covers, but the actual boots. And you can see, don't forget, we have this little poly group at the bottom here of the sole. And I'm going to go back to my Z modeler brush, B, and then Z, and then grab my Z modeler. I'm going to hover over one of these faces. You can see here it says extrude all polygons. That's what it was before when I was working on the boot cover, but I want to extrude just this group, the white ones here. So I'm going to hover over a face and hold down spacebar. I'm going to change the target from all polygons to polygroup all. So now if I grab one of these little guys here and just pull, it's going to pull just those down, and now I have basically the sole of the shoe. Okay, that's what I wanted to get. I wanted to get basically a little bit more of a thin sole here, and I'm going to kind of give myself a little bit of like a little indentation around here. So I'm going to hover over this edge. You can see by default it's set to insert edge. So if I tap, it's going to insert an edge. That's not what I want. I'm going to hover over an edge and hold down spacebar. I'm going to change the action to bevel. Now if I hover over this edge and tap and drag, it's going to tap and drag. It's going to make that edge basically into 2 edges. See, it goes all the way around. And now when I hover over a face extrude polygroup all, you'll note this new row of faces is its own polygroup. I can just tap and push in and kind of get basically the sole of the shoe separate from the rest of the boot, right? So that's a cool little way to do this. Now I want to kind of like make sure that these groups stay nice and sharp, so I'm going to come over here to geometry, just like we did with the boot covers. Go to crease level down to about 3, and then hit crease polygroup border. Now you're going to see those little darker dotted lines there. So now if I hit D, you're going to see that it's smooth, but the polygroup borders stay nice and sharp, which is what I'm going for. Okay, so now we have basically a boot that looks like a boot. I'll hit Shift D to get out of that mode. I just wanted to kind of have that started. And now I'm going to go back really quickly to my boot covers and just pull that down all the way to about there. And now, obviously it's not exactly flat with this. That's no problem. We're going to fix that in a second. I'm just going to grab this and pull all the way down. And now if I go to my side view, I'm going to hold down Control. I'm going to change this to my mask pen. And I'm going to hold down Control and just tap and drag a square right up to the bottom of the shoe, right? So it masks out that area. Control tap to invert. Go to my Move tool. I'm going to hold down Alt and bring it down here, and then just get my vertical scale and just kind of crunch that up into the bottom of that mask. So now it's nice and flat on the bottom here. Okay. So now this boot, again, we can subdivide this and shape this however we want, but at least now it is blocked out and has kind of a tread at the bottom, a little sole at the bottom, something to kind of make it look like it's part of that situation, right? So there we go. Okay, so we can call the boots roughly blocked in and done. Plenty of little things to do here. I can kind of come in here and adjust the positioning of all these kinds of things, but the idea is there, right? So let's just add a couple little things that we need to him. Let's add the belt buckle, for example. So I'm going to come here, and it's just basically a square with a little hole punched out. So let's go to our belt, and there's no subdivision on the belt, so I'm just going to go to my Move tool and hold down Control and just pull out a copy of that belt, and then go to my gear and choose a ring. Now it might seem weird to choose a ring, but we're going to do it anyway. And while we're here, we're going to turn this into basically that open cube. So I'm going to go to polyframe, so I'll hit Shift F so I can see what's going on. Let's go to my gear now, and I'm sorry, not to my gears, my little cones. And you can see here these cones allow us to adjust the number of subdivisions, right? So if I bring this down to only 4, now I have something close to that ring, but I want this to not be rounded around here. I want it to be more of a square. So the other subdivisions, the S subdivisions, I'm going to bring this down to 4. You can see here it's 4, but they're twisted in the wrong direction. So if I go to one of these, this second green one, I want to twist this 45 degrees so it kind of rotates the edges around. Now when you want to do that 45, make sure you hold down Shift when you do it. That way it'll do it in 5-degree increments. And now I can just, there you go. So now I have basically that cube, this square. I can go to this little white one called S radius and make this more or less thin as well. So go to my gear, go back to my ring 3D, I'll hold down Shift and then rotate it twice so it goes exactly this far. Right away now let's go to split unmasked points before I forget. And now hold down Alt, hit my little orientation arrow so I can move this straight back, scale it down to whatever size it needs to be, and then put it right against the belt as the belt buckle, right? Pretty straightforward. Now I do want to have this be beveled a little bit. I want to go here to gray so it feels a little bit more metallic and fill it. Actually, I want to make this a metal material in a minute, but I want these edges to be less crazy sharp. So how do I do that? Well, let's go to polyframe. I'm going to solo mode. Let's look at this from the side view. Okay, I'm going to hold down, actually I'm going to go to my Z modeler brush. Let's hit B for brush, Z for Z modeler, and let's go to Z modeler. I'm going to hover over an edge. Now you might think just choose bevel edge loop, and you can do that. If I tap and drag, see how it kind of bevels that nicely. The problem is if I do the inner edge, it works pretty well. Sometimes it doesn't. So in our case, good, we'll take it. We'll take any victory we can. I'm just going to tap on these other edges here. If you just tap, it'll redo the previous exercise exactly. Now I have this nice little beveled edge here. I'm going to go up here to MRGB, choose, in my case I'm going to choose Z metal, and a kind of a light gray color, and just hit fill object, and then I'm going to turn this off. So now I have this metal. I'll go back to ZBrush Paint now. So now everything else stays ZBrush Paint, but now I have a nice little metal belt buckle for my dude. And again, you can kind of like, you know, make it whatever shape or size that you need to kind of get it in place. Well, you probably use that same material for the claws, and we're going to work our way toward the claws very soon. Okay, so we're going to make the gloves, and by make the gloves, I think I'm just going to basically take part of the arm and just make it a little bit bigger or inflate it so it looks like gloves. There's no real reason to make a whole separate piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the arms, and I'm going to go to my geometry tab and go down to level 1 and go to my polyframe so I can see what I want to do. Now I'm going to actually go up to level 2 so I can see a few more faces here, because I want to hide the faces that I want to turn into the glove. What I don't want to do is have the glove go across here, because this little bow here will make the line not so straight. So I'm going to hold down Control and Shift. I'm going to go to my selection, make sure it's my selection lasso here. So come back over here, hang on a second. All right. Okay, so I'm going to hold down Control and Shift. I'll make sure this is my selection lasso here, so it's easier to get a nice row. I'm going to hold down Control, Shift, and Alt and just hide these faces. Again, you can see, make sure I hide everything down there. This little bow up here is a bit of an issue. So what I'm going to do now is go up to level 3, and I'm going to go here to my visibility and go to grow. And it's going to grow a little bit down. It's going to give me a little bit more clearance from that little area. Now if I Control, Shift, click, and drag, this is what I wanted my glove to be made from. Okay, so I'm going to hit Control W. It's going to make that its own poly group, which means I can kind of easily separate it from the rest. Okay, now I'm going to go Control, Shift, tap to bring everything back, and let's see how this works. Let's go to my geometry tab. I'm going to go to level 4, which is the highest level I have. I'm actually going to divide this 2 more times, so I have a lot of faces. Control, Shift, tap on the gloves. I'm going to make sure that I fill them with that color so it's all one thing. And I'm going to Control, Shift, tap, and drag to inverse my visibility, because I want to make sure that these little paint here is all the flesh tone. So I'm going to now hit C over the arm and fill that. Now I'm going to, well, actually I don't want to paint, I painted a little bit here. So I'm just going to mask out this little area, invert it, and fill it so it stays that color. Okay, I have to do a little bit of smoothing there. But now, Control, Shift, tap, and drag. This is my gloves. Make sure I hover over the paint, hit C again to fill that, and now I'm just going to mask it out. So I'm going to hold down Control and just tap. Control tap will invert the mask, but since there is no mask, Control tap, it masks everything. Now if I Control Shift tap to bring everything back, and then Control tap to invert my mask, now I just have this, right? Now I can just get my move brush, or even my inflate brush, but I'm going to use my move brush here and just kind of pull this part out, just to kind of give it a little separation from the actual arm. And again, you can use your inflate brush as well. It's just, I just didn't want to be too puffy, but inflate also works just fine. While I'm there, I'm going to fill it again. Okay, so now I have basically a little ridge now saying this is the glove. And you can see here that those little faces that kind of got pulled out aren't quite painted brown. So I'm going to hold down Control and Shift and tap to isolate this. And this happens sometimes, by the way. I'm going to undo. I'm going to hold down Control and Shift and change this back to my selection rectangle, then that won't happen. So now I can go down here again to my visibility and grow. I'll just grow once for now and then fill that. That way now that part is not quite so weird. Okay, Control Shift tap on this little area here. You can see, I just want to get my paintbrush before I forget, sample that darker tone, and just kind of, you know, bring that back because it looked a little like a tan line. Okay, let's grow this again. Hit that color and throw it on there. All right. So I just want to. Sometimes you have to go back and forth, honestly, with the painting. So I'm just going to do that here because it's going to drive me nuts if I don't. Okay. So there we go. Getting there. All right. That's fine. All right. So now we have the glove kind of blocked out, and what I'm going to start doing now is going here with these fingers. And not at a 1.4 million. There's no reason to do that. I'm going to go back down to level 2 or 3, level 3 or 4, I should say, and just I'm going to go solo mode, turn off my floor so I can see better. And all I'm going to do now, and this is going to be done mostly in between videos, is go with my inflate brush and kind of like start building out the knuckles. Clay buildup is good for this too. Even standard brush is fine. But I want there to be more form to the hands. You can see here how they're very like just a little hot doggy. So I'm gonna get my damp standard brush, kind of carve in little bits here. I'm gonna make a fist out of these, so I'm not gonna get too concerned about this yet. But I just want to kind of like give myself, so when I bend the fingers, I'm going to give myself a little indication as to where the knuckles are. So I'm going to get my clay buildup brush, for example, and just kind of rough in an indication of where the two knuckles on each finger is. It looks a little goofy, I know, but I'm just roughing in some shape to the hands, because it's really easy when you're starting to kind of like pose a hand to kind of lose sight of where the fingers need to bend from and so forth. So I'm just going to come in here and just start kind of like digging in here. I hit my standard brush with Alt, kind of dig in between to kind of create those little tendon looks, and a light smooth, just to kind of, again, just to kind of give us a little indication now as to where the knuckles are, so that when we pose the hand in the next video, you know, we're not flying blind. Right, so just really rough approximation, but I just wanted to kind of like establish clearly that there are gloves and that there are fingers. Okay, so here's the thing about posing fingers. It's not fun to watch. It's not fun to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to talk about the process, and then I'm just going to stop and do a time lapse, so you can, you know, if you want to watch it, you certainly can, but you can figure it out on your own as to how to do this. First thing you want to do is make sure you go back down to a low subdivision level. Maybe not level 1, but level 2 probably at most. And what I'm going to start doing, I'm going to go to solo mode here as well. What I'm going to start doing is basically masking and rotating. And that's all this is going to do, be over and over and over again. The key though is to make sure you only mask out what you want to move. Now, I'm going to try and get to these fingers, but these arms are going to get in the way. So what I'm going to do is hold down Control, Shift, and Alt with my selection lasso here, and just hide the stuff I know I don't need. So this is kind of one of the good things about being able to hide stuff, is that you don't have to worry about stuff being in your way. So here's going to be the process. I'm going to start with the pinky here. I'm going to hold down Control to get my mask lasso. Lasso is good for this. I'm going to mask out just this finger. Now make sure you get the entire finger, but nothing else. So I got this entire finger. Control tap now to invert this mask and get my move tool, W. If you can't see the move tool, it's okay. Just hold down Alt and tap on the mesh, and it'll appear at that point. Now I'm going to hold down the Alt key so I can kind of reposition this, because I want to move this where the knuckle would bend from. Okay, and then I can swing this in like this. Right now, if I need to, I can kind of cheat and kind of pull it out a little bit, because that's okay. I just want to be able to kind of rotate it like so. Now I'm going to hold down Control and mask out to the next knuckle, and make sure I have a good camera angle straight from the side of the finger. Hold down Alt and move this so that it is now where the next knuckle would bend from. Okay, like this. Take a look from other sides and make sure that it's not on some crazy angle, because it can happen sometimes. Now I'm going to mask out to the second knuckle now, and hold down Alt, bring it here, and rotate it down. And again, if you need to kind of adjust it and move it and like move it around, don't be afraid to cheat. I'm going to clear that mask, and now I'm going to do the same thing. Now, it can be tricky with this. You might just need to kind of do a little smoothing to kind of like push them apart, so you can kind of get that mask in there. But you do always want to double check to make sure that you mask out exactly and only what you want to mask out. Because if you rotate something or move something and there's something else unmasked, it can be really bad. So I'm just going to hold down the Alt and move this into position. I want to make sure that the angle makes sense, right? So when I rotate, in this case, the blue, I know that I'm getting exactly what I expect, right? And mask out to the second knuckle now, which is probably right around here. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of give myself a visual clue as to where the second knuckle was, because it is kind of easy to lose track as to where you are. I'm going to mask out to this next area here, hold down Alt, bring it up, and then bring that in. Okay? Now I'm going to clear my mask, and you can see basically this is where we're going to be. I'm going to get my standard brush and kind of build out the knuckles here that you're going to have standing out when you bend your finger, right? You might need to kind of get your move brush and kind of re-establish the corners of the fingers, because a lot of times when you bend these, it's going to get a little rubbery. So just kind of bring those out, right? And that's the idea. So I'm going to do the same thing with these next three. Okay, so we're going to make Wolverine's claws now. And the first thing I want to do is make the actual little the little holders for the claws. These little shapes here. And then we're going to just put the claws in there. So we're going to make them pretty easily. I think we're going to get a sphere. So I'm going to come here to my subtool palette, and I'm just going to insert anything. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to choose a sphere. I'm going to make this gray for now, and I'm just going to go to my little gear and swap this out for this thing called a sphere 3D, not the polysphere. Sphere 3D. Let's go to my solo mode so I can see what's going on. You can see here, one of the cool things about this sphere 3D is that I can make this a full sphere, or I can kind of like bring this back, which is kind of what I want to do, because I want to have a little bit of a flat end for the claws to come out. So kind of like this is probably pretty good. I'm going to go to my little gear and go back to my gizmo. And I also want to remove the bottom half here. So while I have this, I'm going to go to my gizmo and go to flatten, and just flatten the bottom right up to about there. Right, go to my gear, hit accept. Look at it from above here. I'm going to squash it in this direction. I do want to taper it too. I'm going to bring it down a little bit, but I want to do a little bit of a taper. So I'm going to go to my gear and choose taper. Now, actually, I'm not going to choose taper, and the reason why is because taper tapers it in from all directions. So if I taper it, see how it kind of bows up there? I don't want that. So I want to taper it in a different way. So what I'm going to do is just use my deformer. I'm going to go to my gear and choose deformer. And I'm going to go here to my little orange cones and push this in so I only have cones at the end, at both ends. I'm going to mask out the ends that the claw is going to come from. So I'll just have this, and now I can just squeeze this in like this a little bit, right? Oops, let's undo that so I can just do it one more time. So I can just mask out the other ones, squeeze this in. If I want to kind of squash it down, I can do that too. I can just hold down Control and mask out this top one, so I can then just push it down like this, right? So it stays nice and in place, okay? Now if I want to bring this end up, I can as well. I can hold down Control, mask out this middle one, invert it, just grab my little orange dude and kind of pull it up a little bit, just to kind of give me more of a raised area. Go to my gear, hit accept. Now what I want to do is, it's got these two little ridges going across there, so let's do that. First thing I want to do is, maybe I want to widen this a little bit too. I'm going to go back to my move tool. Let's go back to my deformer. I'm going to increase the number of little subdivisions here to about there. I can mask out this one, invert, go to my little red scale and kind of widen this a little bit, just so that it gets a little wider toward the end there. Okay, anyway, so now let's make this into metal. I'm going to come over here and choose Z metal as my material, and I have RGB turned on. Let's hit fill object. Now I'm going to go back to plain old RGB, which is what the move tool has by default. Move brush, I should say. And now let's go to polyframe. I want to have a couple little ridges in here, so I'm going to go to my Z modeler brush, the brush that we used to work on. I don't know. I think it was the boots. And let's go to B and then Z, and let's go to Z modeler. And what I want to do basically is take two of these edges and kind of like bevel them into polygroups. So I'm going to hover over, say, this one, hold down spacebar, make sure you hover over an edge, right? Not a face, not a point, but an edge. So you see edge, hold down spacebar, you should see edge actions right here. I'm going to choose bevel. I'll hover over this little line, just tap and drag my pen until I get the beveled edge and the polygroup that I like. Now if I want to do another one, and I do, like say right here, instead of tapping and dragging, I can just tap and it'll redo it exactly the same way. Okay, so now I want to make these little areas pushed in. So I'm going to hover over a face. Now mine says extrude polygroup all, which is what I want. Now I have it like that because the last time I used it in a previous video, I set it to this. If you are starting new and it says something like QMesh a poly, which is what it says by default, hover over a face here, hold down spacebar, make sure it says polygon actions, set it to extrude, and set it to polygroup all. Okay, and so you're going to tell it to extrude a polygroup, and the polygroup is this different colored group of faces here. So I'm going to hold down, hover over this face, and tap and drag my pen inward to extrude that in. I want to do the exact same thing here. So instead of tapping and dragging, just hover over that face and just tap. It'll do it the exact same way. Okay. Now while I'm here, I might as well clean up this edge. So I'm going to bevel this edge a little bit. So I'm going to hover over this little edge, and it still says bevel. Just tap and drag a little bit, just kind of wiggle it so it knows to kind of like use a smaller version of bevel. Otherwise it'll bevel the exact same width as you had in the past. And once you have it done the first time, now I can just go through and just tap these edges, and it just kind of makes the edges a little bit cleaner. And now, one more thing I want to do. I'm going to hover over this edge here, okay, and hold down spacebar and change it to insert. I'm going to tap and drag an edge on both corners here. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I want this edge to stay nice and sharp, and having edges right there by the corners will do that. So now I also want these to be dark. So I'm going to hold down Control and Shift and tap on that poly group. You see that? I'm going to come here and choose black, fill object. I'll go back to ZBrush Paint now. And now if I Control Shift tap to bring everything back, you'll see I have this cool little, thing going on here. Okay. Now if I hit D, you see here it gets nice and smooth, but at the end here it looks a little goofy, right? So that smooth mesh preview that we're doing, that dynamic subdiv is showing me that this is a problem. So I want to kind of make this edge nice and clean. So if I go back to my Z modeler brush, I'm going to hover over an edge, make sure this is set to insert again. I can hover over one of these little spokes and tap, and it's going to add an edge. And if I push this right up against that edge there, it'll keep that edge sharper. I can come at this edge from the other side as well, from here, and just tap and drag. And now that edge is going to be supported. So now if I hit D again, you'll note that stays nice and sharp. Okay, this is what I want. I want to have 3 of these on each hand. So I'm going to turn solo mode off, get my move tool, and I'm going to go here to one side. Doesn't really matter which side it is. I'm going to bring this over here, rotate it. Obviously it needs to be scaled down quite a bit. I'm going to start right in the middle. That way I know, that I need to adjust it on either side. I'm just going to go to the fist here really fast and adjust this shape because it looks terrible. Okay, better at least. So look at my move tool now. Again, I'm going to rotate this down, put this right smack in the middle here. I'm going to scale it in a little bit here, scale the whole thing down a touch more. Okay. Just decide where along the hand you want this to go. Kind of right about there is probably pretty good. Just make sure it's completely on there. Angle it up so that the blade has somewhere to come from. And now I'm just going to, once I make sure I'm happy with the position, just go down Control and drag out a copy, and angle it a little bit out perhaps, so that it's so that the blades can kind of not be in a straight line. They kind of come out a little bit, right, in different. Oops, I'll hold down Alt and move this back this way, so that I can rotate it from the tail end here. Like this. Now I'm going to hold down Control and drag out another one, swivel it that way, and put that over here. Okay, so this will be where the claws come from. Okay, like that. I can go here to my move tool, center it, scale the whole thing down just a little bit. All right, and now I want to just mirror it over to the other side. So I'm going to come down here and hit mirror. Boom. Now I have it there. Okay, so now we're going to give Wolverine his claws. And these are pretty straightforward, I think. We're just going to basically make a cube and then bend it a little bit. So let's come here, and I'm going to come. These are my claw bases, so I'm just going to rename that claw bases. And let's insert another shape. Let's just go to a cube. Doesn't really matter what it is. We're going to swap it out. Go to my gear, my move tool here, and choose polycube. Let's go to solo mode so I can see what's going on. I'm going to make this a grayish color. And let's go here to polyframe. This is my side view. I want to make sure that I have enough subdivisions in the side, maybe like 10 or so. Up and down though, I kind of only want that. And left and right, again, I'm going to probably only give myself, let's give myself none. So just nothing up and down, nothing back to front, but only left and right. Okay, go to my gizmo. Let's crunch this down a little bit here. Let's crunch this down a little bit here, and then let's make this go. Let's just make this long, like a claw. Get the claw shape here. Now, for this, it's a very straightforward process, I think. In fact, you know what I might do though? I might go back to my polycube. I'm going to give myself one subdivision down the middle. So I need to. Oops. Let's get my not Y, not up and down, for goodness sakes. left and right, one right down the middle, like that. Okay, up and down I don't really care about, so there you go. So now I have to re-establish the dimensions, but that's okay. I want one right down the middle so I can kind of use that as the sharp part. Okay, so there we go. So there we go. I'm going to go my gear here. I'm going to choose deformer. And what I want with my deformer here really is I want to have fewer. I want to only have maybe that many, just none left and right, and none up and down. Just a basic little box here. So you can see the kind of it's kind of offset. So I'm going to hold down Control and mask out this bottom one, then Control tap to invert, and then just pull this forward to kind of give it that bladey feel there. These two, I'm going to mask these out now and invert that and scale these down so they kind of have that little taper going on. Okay, now I'll go here and hit accept. Now I want to give, I'm going to bend this eventually, but what I want to do before that is give it that little bevel blade thing that's going on here, right? So the easiest way to do that is to take this middle edge and just scale it out a little bit. So I'm going to go to my Z modeler brush again, B and then Z, and grab my Z modeler brush. I'm going to zoom in here and hover over an edge, and you can see right now it's set to insert. It's not what I want, so I'm going to hover over an edge and hold down spacebar. I want to change the edge action to scale, but I also want to make sure the target is not a single edge. I want it to be the entire edge loop. So now if I hover over here and it says scale edge loop complete, I can just tap and drag. Oops, make sure I'm on the scale. I'm going to tap and drag, and it's going to just basically make this whole thing get bigger. Now I got way too big, so I'm going to just do a little bit here like this, just to kind of make that come out a little bit more. Okay, and I need to pull this part of the blade down. The scale, I don't want to scale it everywhere the same amount, because if I pull this down more, this is going to come way out. So I'm going to go to my front view here, hold down Control and mask out that little point, because it's going to go through all the way to the back. I'm going to mask out that entire row. Control tap to invert, and now I get my move tool and just pull down. You can see here I'm going to kind of pull down that blade a little bit here. It doesn't seem like it's pulling down everything. You know why? I don't know why actually, but let's just make sure that this works for me here. So I'm going to hold down Control and just make sure I mask out all the way up so I get all the way to the back here. Then invert and pull that down and see if that works better. Yeah, it just didn't go all the way to the back. Alright, like that. I'm going to mask out this little point, invert it, and pull this forward a little bit more. So now we have basically this kind of blade looking guy, and now I want to just curve it a little bit. So you can do it with the bend curve. I'm going to move tool, I'm going to center it, go here to my gear and choose bend curve, give myself 3 little dots and just get this one in the middle here and just give it a little bit of a bend like that. Go to my gear, choose accept. Now I'm going to come up here to, I'm going to do my move brush here really fast. I'm going to change this to MRGB, get my color that I want, go to Z metal, right, and then fill object, then go back to ZBrush Paint and change this back to plain old RGB again. So now I have a metallic little blade that I'm just going to basically slide into the little blade holders. So I'm going to hold down Alt and move my move tool back here so that I can scale it down to the base and put this where it needs to go. So I'm going to pop this. Again, I'm going to start right in the center. Actually, I'll start on the side here. Why not? And move this in. Slide it right in there. And again, because the pivot point is there, I can just scale it straight back and get exactly the length and the size that I want without having to worry about moving it over and over and over again. So that feels about right. Let's Control drag out a copy. So take your time with these, make sure that they're the right angle and they match up with the blade holder. Okay, and Control drag out another one, swivel it into place. I'm trying to use the actual arrows and not the white arrows. That way I know that I'm moving it exactly in that axis, because when you're doing something like this where it kind of needs to be pretty precise, you want to make sure that you know exactly what you're doing with it in terms of where you're rotating it and where you're moving it and stuff. So that's close, I think. That middle one seems like it's a little off compared to the other two, so I'm just going to nudge it over. There we go. Now we got those blades. They might be a little bit longer than they should be, but I kind of like them like that. I feel like this this one here is definitely on a different angle though, so let's make sure that we adjust that, because if you look at it from the front, it's definitely a little bit, I mean the hand is twisted a little bit, so it's understandable to a degree, but maybe not quite so much to that degree. Alright, there we go. Now come down here, mirror, and the one subtool. Alright, so now we got Wolverine and his claws. Again, you can make them shorter if you want to, but I kind of like them that length. Alright folks, let's work on the mask. So let's go here to the helmet up here. Again, there's a bunch of things we have to kind of do to this to kind of get it looking cool. We're going to go to the head, and if you look here at the picture, he's got like, there's actually kind of like a part of the face. It's like the nose part that kind of comes out over top. And again, you can make it a separate piece, but I feel it just makes more sense just to kind of build it from the face here, and then just kind of give it a nice sharp edge to kind of give it that impression. So I'm just building up, and again, you can turn off the paint just for a second here. So I'm going to turn off the little paintbrush icon so you can see what I'm doing. I just want to like fill this part up. So I'm smoothing it out just to kind of make the surface the same. And then I'm going to start building this up a little bit here, so that it kind of like is this little nose piece here. And then I can start building up the brow over top of it. But my main thing here, now if I hit Control D, I'm going to subdivide this one more time so I can get a smoother line in here. I'm going to go to my damn standard brush. I'm going to kind of carve in where I want the little nose piece to be. I hold down Alt and kind of drag out a nice little edge. I'm going to do the same thing here on the side. I'll hold down Alt and drag in a nice little edge here to kind of establish where that little nose piece, that little yellow nose piece is right there. I can kind of carve in here a little bit and get my standard brush and kind of like just build in these little indentations of like this brow. Alright, but I just want to kind of get that started. I can come in here now with my damn standard brush and just kind of establish a little bit more clearly where the little ridge is going to be. We're going to do more once we have more points, but I want to kind of get that started. Okay, so I kind of have the indication of where that mask is going to be, but I don't have enough points for this to really look good yet. So I'm going to divide this a couple more times. So I have 1.6 million, and what I want to do is establish exactly where the yellow part of the helmet is. So I'm going to go, basically I'm going to go to solo mode, and I'm just going to hold down Control. I'm going to change this to my mask lasso. I'm just going to lasso basically a line where I think that yellow helmet is going to be, kind of like right there maybe. Go to Sharpen Mask. I'm going to Control Tap to invert my mask. Now I'm going to get my inflate brush and just lightly, again very lightly, just go over this edge just to kind of give a raised edge feel to this, so it feels like a separate little piece. Okay, and now I'll go back to my subtool palette, turn paint back on, and I'm just going to throw throw that yellow color in there. Okay, so now you can see here, this is what you're seeing. I probably yeah, I'm going to undo back a little bit here to before I did that. Let's just do a different, let's just put this in a different spot here, like that. I'll sharpen my mask and then again just do a little inflatesies right there and then fill. Alright, so now and while I have this open like this, and it's just this area, I'm going to hit Control W. What that's going to, oh, actually I'm going to hold down Control and Tap to invert my mask, and then hit Control W. It's going to make a polygroup out of that masked area. So in case I need to isolate that area again, I can and not have to worry too much about it. Okay. So that's kind of a nice little way to ensure that you have some, you can get back to that, right? I'll clear my mask. I'm going to come in here and hit B for brush, and then O for orb cracks. I want to kind of get a nice clean sharp line here that we started way back when in the mask. So I'm going to come up here. Lazy mouse is turned on. You might not see this on this little lazy radius thing on your screen because your screen I think is a little smaller. So under stroke, under lazy mouse, you're going to see that same lazy radius slide. I'm going to crank this up to like 30 or 40. What this will do is it'll give me that little long red line that allows my stroke to be nice and smooth. I'm going to go to solo mode, and you can see that long red line. It just kind of helps smooth out the stroke so it's nice and straight. And I want to draw this line that kind of go all the way around to the back of the helmet. Try and match up where I stopped. There you go. Okay, so now basically I have just a line that kind of goes back through there a little bit more. If I want to increase that, I can hit B for brush, C, and there's a brush called Contrast Delta, and what that brush will do is it kind of increases the peaks and valleys of whatever you go over, so it'll just kind of increase that line a little bit more. Okay, so now we have something a little bit more distinct. All right, so that's the top part of the mask. Now let's kind of work on the face part of the mask. So I want to get a nice clean mask of where his face is going to be as opposed to his mask. So I have to use a mask, but I'm going to the mask lasso can be a little bit tricky to do to get a nice clean line. So I'm going to just try my best here. And again, if it's not perfect, it's not perfect. We're going to have to just keep trying. Remember, Control and Alt is a mask eraser, so I can kind of like mask out what I want and then kind of adjust it if I need to. But let's just, I'm going to turn off color for a second so I can get a better look at what I'm getting here. Right, so I just want to kind of have a nice clean line as best I can. It might not be in the cards, but we'll try. Now what I can do is hold down Control. I'm going to change this from Mask Lasso to something called the Mask Curve. And the Mask Curve is it's like the pen tool if you ever use like Illustrator or Photoshop. I hold down Control and so I tap. It's going to drag out this little line. And you see this little gradient. The gradient is where it's going to mask. So if I come this way and just tap the Alt key as I'm dragging it, it'll put like a little bend in it. Tap Alt, and now if I hold down Alt again before I let go, it'll be a mask eraser, and it'll kind of give me a nice sharp erasure line. Do the same thing going this way. So I'm going to hold down Control, come up here, right, hold down Alt, and just use that mask curve, that kind of very, very aggressive curve and clean line as a way of kind of like isolating and unmasking certain areas. So again, hold down Alt, let go, and I'll unmask that little area there. Actually, I want to go forward here. Hang on. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing down here. So Control, tap my Alt key a couple times to give it some bends. Hold down Alt, so it unmasks that. So now this is a very, very sharp area. I'll hit Control W, and it'll make that its own polygroup, so I can isolate that whenever I need to. Okay. So now, oops. So I have my mask here. I'll turn on my color again, and I'm going to invert my mask. Hover over here, sample that paint. Make sure RGB is turned on, fill object, so I'm going to fill it with that color. Now I'm going to Control Tap to invert, and I want to fill the rest of this with this dark brown, but obviously not the yellow part. So I can Control Shift, go to my selection rectangle, tap on here to select that, Control Shift tap on it a second time to hide that. And now I will need to repaint the nose, but that's okay. So I'm just going to go here, sample that brown, and before I fill, don't forget, I'm going to hide the torso. I'm going to mask the torso out a little bit here. So I'll use my mask curve for that. The mask curve can take a little bit of time, so I'm going to go back to my mask lasso for the rest of this. But now I can just hit fill object. Now it's going to fill that, and I can just Control Tap and drag it through my mask. Control Shift Tap to bring everything back. And now again, it's a lot cleaner. I might need to do a little bit more. Some little minor adjustments here to kind of get the right paint. So let me just really quickly fill that as well, so that stays that way. Okay, so little adjustments here probably are going to be needed, but nothing big. Now you see what happened there. The lasso went through to the other side, So don't forget to be doubly sure before you start filling things that you have it set to correct. Okay, so that's a good starting point here. The face is very, very bland, but at least we have our colors set up. And we're going to do the same thing with the torso here. So let's just hold down Control. Let's go back to our trusty mask curve here. And I want to kind of hold down Control and just tap. I'm going to tap and tap and tap to get a nice curved mask here like this. Okay, now so you can see how this is a little bit blocky. So I'm going to clear my mask. I'm going to hit subdivide one more time to get myself some more points. So I have like 6 million. It's a lot of points, but it'll make for a cleaner mask. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for here. Let's make sure that I use this correctly though. So let's just let it think for a second. Okay, so now I got that part masked off. I can go back to my paintbrush. Here we go. Get my nice dark brown here and throw that color on. Like so. And again, while I'm here, I can just use my inflate brush lightly, just again to pull that part up right by the edges here, just to kind of give the indication that this is a separate piece of the outfit. Okay, like so. Now I'm going to Control Tap to invert my mask. And now I should just have this part ready to go. And now I don't want to just fill this because again I have my shoulders here. So I'm going to go to my Control, I'm going to go to my mask lasso for this next part because the mask curve can be a little bit slow and this part's a little bit straightforward. So I'm just going to kind of mask out the shoulders. Make sure I get it nice and clean though. Now I'm going to hit Sharpen Mask. So now I just have this area open. I'm going to hover over here, hit C to sample that color, hit Fill, right? And now I have a nice clean indication of, of paint here. All right, so the main last thing we have to do is just adjust the belt a little bit. The belt has got little belt loops on there, so we're just going to do that really quickly. And then I'll go here, I'm going to select the belt, hover over here, hit C to sample that same color. And let's go to my Insert Primitive Brush, and I'm just going to choose this Q Cube. I'm going to hit X for symmetry, that way I can get them on both sides at the same time. And make sure that local sim is turned on because I'm going to be scaling these up on either side of the center point, and that's always an issue if you don't have local symmetry turned on. Just going to jam these right in there. Again, it doesn't really matter how far back they go, so long as they, they can be like a tooth. They can go way back in there. Who cares? As long as they're not too small. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to actually go ahead and split these off from the belt. And I'm just going to go do a different brush to make that go away. But I'm going to now go here and I'm going to hold down Shift, click on the eyeball here to hide everything, then bring back just the belt and the belt loops. Got my belt loops here. And what I'm going to do is actually, I'm going to turn local sim off just for a second. I'm going to come here to mirror. And this time, instead of mirroring across the X-axis, which is left and right, I'm going to make it the Z-axis, which is front to back. And you can see now it's just going to reverse them. Now I'm just going to mask out the ones in front and go to my little Google Maps icon and center that here. And I can just hold down Alt, hit my little button, and just jam them in here. So again, you don't need to do it this way, obviously, but just letting you know that you can always mirror things in different directions if you need to. I'm going to hold down Shift, hit the little eyeball icon twice to bring everything back. And there we go. You might notice the belt isn't perfect in the back here. It's okay. I'm still going to pose my character a little bit, and I'm going to adjust everything after I do that. So now I have these little guys here. Now if I were to hit D to give me a smooth preview, you can see here it's not looking great, right? So I'm going to hit Shift D to get back, and I'm going to crease these with a low crease value. So I'm going to go to Geometry and go to Crease, right? And I'm going to go to Polyframe so you can see what's happening. I'm going to hit Crease. The crease tolerance is 45 degrees, which means every edge that's at more than a 45-degree angle is going to get creased, which is pretty much just all the outer edges. So hit Crease, but I'm going to make sure my crease level is set to like 2. So I'm going to hit Crease. Now that's creased. Now if I hit Control D, and then one more time Control D, it's going to get a little smoother, which is kind of what I want. I don't want it to be too harsh, right? Because again, if the crease level is set to 2, that means those edges will stay sharp through 2 subdivisions if I subdivide 2 more times, then it's going to be a little bit smoother and looks a little bit nicer. Let's now go to the actual belt. And again, I'm going to need to do the same thing with this. I need to crease this. So I'm going to hit crease. But actually, let me undo that. Make sure my crease level is set to something like 2. So now I'm going to crease. And now I'm going to subdivide, Control D, Control D, Control D. And now again, you're going to see it's going to start getting a little bit smoother now. What I want to do is got kind of like basically like a little bit of a stitch going around there. So let's go ahead and do that. Now I'm going to need a lot of points for this stitch to look good, so I'm going to divide again. So I have 500,000. I'm going to divide one more time. So it seems like a lot of points for a belt, and it is, but I want to kind of make sure I have plenty of points for this. I'm going to turn symmetry off for this. I don't want it to overlap itself. I'll hit B for brush and then S, and you're going to see a brush here called Stitch Basic, and it is set to add paint. So I'm going to set it to RGB. I'm going to sample that red and then make it a tiny bit lighter so that it's a little bit different. Now I'm going to come here and just start tapping and dragging right across the front. You're going to see I get this very long red line. That is that lazy mouse, which helps kind of smooth out the stroke. So I'm going to let that lazy mouse do its work. I'm going to come across the front, on the top and the bottom here as best I can. And now I'm going to move my camera to the side and just kind of pick up where I left off, again as best I can. Doesn't need to be perfect necessarily, you just want to kind of be as close as possible so that it makes the most sense. But again, you need to have a lot of points for this, right? This will not work if you have like 20,000 points. It only works if you have probably 1 million or 2. So just be aware that you need to kind of prep your mesh for something like this, right? So then I come here and just drag this out a little bit more. And now I can just make these line up again, or meet up as best I can. It's not going to be perfect, but no one's going to be looking that close. It just needs to look, you know, a little bit better. There we go. Now I'm going to go to my standard brush, set this to spray, choose my alpha as my little scratchy alpha here. I'm going to set this to Z subtract and go down to a lower sort of a lower intensity, like 9 or so. And for this, I'll turn symmetry on, and I'm just going to turn on RGB as well, sample that original red and make it slightly darker. So now basically as I lightly spray on here, I'm kind of like making this look like dark, like a cracked leather. And because I'm painting as I go, it's already kind of giving it a little bit of a darker, creasy feel, right? So it's just a nice little way to get some cool texture on there. So the belt loops, again, in the picture, they're red as well. I don't really know exactly why that is, but who knows. I'm just going to lightly scratch them up a little bit with my same brush just because I want it to feel like it's part of the belt. Okay, so I have to do some final stuff. We have to kind of do the shorts. We have to kind of do some sculpting on the torso and some painting, all that kind of stuff. But I want to pose him first so that nothing I do will be messed up by the pose. So the first thing I want to do is come over here to my subtool palette, come over here and hit all low. It's going to switch everything to its lowest subdivision level so it's easier to pose. And now I'm going to come down here to this little button here called T-Pose Mesh. There are 2 buttons here. One is going to temporarily combine him into a single subtool so I can move more than one thing at once. The second one splits him back up. Now if you don't see these, you can also come up here to Z Plugin, which is another menu up here, and you're going to go to Transpose Master, and these same 2 buttons are right here. So this first button is going to temporarily combine all these into a single character. You can see here, our main guy is still right here, but this is a temporary version. And I want to kind of like basically give him a little bit of a pose here. So he's kind of leaning more on this leg in that picture. So I'm going to hold down Control and Shift. I can actually isolate each subtool this way by Control Shift clicking on it. So even though they're all temporarily one piece, I can still isolate them by Control Shift clicking on them. So I'm going to Control Tap and Drag now, and I want to mask out the left leg. Okay, so I'm going to come here and just try and be very careful that, not the left leg, the right leg, that I only get the right leg and not part of the left leg. It can be really tricky, even if you see that you only get one side. Sometimes that mask will go through to the other side. So I'm Control Alt as well to unmask that. So now if I Control Shift Tap to bring everything back, I can Control Tap to invert my mask. Now I'm going to hold down Control and tap on the mesh. That's going to kind of blur that mask a little bit. Get my Move tool, and I'm going to hold down Alt and move this pivot point right to the center of the leg. You see here as I move this, I just want to kind of move this kind of so this leg is straight. Now I'm going to Control Tap to invert my mask. Now I'm just going to mask out everything but the other leg. So I want to make sure that, you know, again, when I move this, only the leg moves, right? Hold down Alt. I'm going to kind of move this leg out a little bit, maybe even like rotate it a touch. Okay. I'm going to Control Tap again to invert my mask. I'm going to keep doing that to make sure that I only get one leg at a time. I'm going to go here to this leg, hold down Alt and hit my little orientation arrow. I want to move this to where the top of the leg is. I'm going to just move this leg up a tiny bit and then go here to the middle of the knee and mask that out, come back down, then move this back a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to go right through the ankle and bring this down right here and flatten that foot a little bit. Okay, now this looks goofy right now, but now I'm going to go to my move tool and I'm going to bring my floor so I can see what's going on. I want to bring this whole guy down like this, so he's kind of got a little bit like, kind of like, right about like this. Now I'm going to mask out the ankle, invert this, and flatten it. So what is going on with this other leg? Well, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to essentially Control Shift Tap. I'm going to isolate the leg parts here. And again, I'm going to mask out just this leg. I want to make sure I'm very careful about this. Control Shift Tap, bring everything back, and then Control Tap to invert this. I'm going to go to my Move tool and move it right here. Hold down Alt and move it like this. I'm actually literally going to just make that leg a little bit longer. I'm just totally cheating. I'm just going to stretch it out a little bit. Okay. Then I'm going to mask to the ankle. Bring this down and then rotate this ankle down so that it's flat on the ground. Okay, maybe angle it out a little bit like this. Okay, so now I have him kind of like a little bit of it on an angle here. I'm going to also control, I'm going to go to my side camera here. I'm going to hold down Alt and go right through the ankles, both ankles here. Go to my Move tool, hold down Alt, hit my orientation button, and I actually angle him forward a little bit like this. And then I'm going to clear my mask. Control Shift Tap on the torso, the arms, the claws, the mask, and the eyes. Mask out the whole lower body. Control Shift Tap to bring everything back. Move my guy up here. I'm going to also mask out just the very bottom of the torso so it stays with the upper body, the lower body. I'm going to angle him back just a little bit. Hold down Alt and move this here. Give him a little bit of a twist. Now I'm going to mask up to about the rib cage. Get my Move tool, hold down Alt, move it up, give him more of a twist. So like he's kind of going to be looking at us kind of like this, maybe even angle him back this way, like this. Okay. Clear my mask. Let's go to my Move tool now. I'm going to hold down Alt, hit my little orientation arrow. I'm going to move the whole guy now, kind of like this. So he's kind of like, you know, got this kind of a look. Now I'm going to have him turning his head to us. So a lot of this is just masking and rotating, but it's really a powerful way to give him a personality. So masking this part, Control Tap to invert, Control Tap on the mesh to kind of blur that mask a little bit. Okay, hold down Alt and just tap, and it'll move the Move tool wherever you tap it. So it kind of gives you a head start in putting it where it needs to be. Just make sure you have it in the center here, so that when you rotate it, it rotates from the center. Okay, like this. I'm going to kind of turn his head down a little bit, right, and then move it toward, have it look at me like this. Okay, let's clear that mask. Let's have one of the arms go back here. Again, I can Control Shift Tap on the arm, and it's really easy now to do that because the shoulder is a separate part, right? Now if I want to, I can mask out the shoulder a little bit as well, and then Control Tap to invert, Control Tap on the mesh just to blur it a little bit. Hold down Alt and tap where I want the Move tool to begin. I'm going to move it a little bit more to the center of the shoulder here. I'm going to just angle this out, maybe rotate this back a little bit. And then I'll have the other arm more down to the side, right? So Control Shift Tap on here, mask it out, Control Shift Tap to bring everything back, mask out this stuff, Control Tap to invert. I don't even need to move the shoulder here. I can just Alt Tap right there to put it right where the the arm will be, like around here. Okay, and I can just rotate it down, swing it a little bit, maybe move it down like this, so it's kind of like that. Okay. So now I'm going to clear my mask. That looks pretty decent. I could also rotate the foot a little bit. I can kind of go here, Control Tap to invert, go to my Move tool, hold down Alt and tap it so it goes right there. Move it so it's kind of right smack dab in the middle. hold down Alt to reorient this, and then I can just slide this out a little bit so it's kind of like his foot is like angled toward me. There you go. Right, now let's go here to the second button, the T-Pose Mesh to Subtools, or up here in Z Plugin, the second button. It's going to jump back to this guy and then swap out the parts one at a time. There you go. And now I'm going to come down here and hit all high, so it's going to restore him to his high-res version. Okay, so we're on the home stretch now. We have him posed, we have him ready to go. Now it's going to do some final details. So I have to make sure, before I forget, to go to the pants here, the legs, and subdivide them quite a bit and do the same kind of thing I did with the shirt up here, which is to give these shorts a little bit more of a distinct look, right? So I'm going to go to solo mode, hold down Control, and go to my mask curve, which I think is just the best way to go about doing this. I'm going to mask out this part of the leg right here. I'm going to turn symmetry off. Don't forget, after you've I've subdivided this to quite a bit of points as well, 5.8 million. Once you've done the posing, if you had symmetry turned on, it will remain on until you turn it off. And once it's posed, obviously, symmetry really doesn't help anymore. So, in fact, it actually kind of works against you sometimes. So just make sure that if you do that, you come back and turn it off. Now I'm going to go back to my mask lasso just to kind of mask out the rest of this so I don't have to worry about anything. And I'll hit my C to get that color, fill it, right, to kind of keep it there. I'll go to my my inflate brush and just lightly kind of build up around that edge, like so, just to kind of make it, again, make it seem like these are a separate piece of clothing. Now I'll Control Tap to invert this, go back to my paintbrush here, sample that same yellow, and just kind of go up against that to make sure that there's no leftover brown from before. Okay, now I'll Control Tap to invert the mask again. Why? I don't know. I'm just going to keep that masked off for now. And I'm going to go back down one level just so it's not quite so dense. Don't worry about how that looks, but I want to kind of give these a little bit of a fold or wrinkle thing. So I'm going to go to my damp standard brush with the Alt key and just kind of, remember, the Alt key inverts what the damp standard brush does, right? So instead of carving in, if you hold down Alt, it'll kind of pull a little thin line out. So it's kind of just a nice little way to get nice little thin material folds. If I don't hold down Alt, obviously I can just get, you know, actual indentations. But now I can just kind of like, you know, get a little bit of that in there. Okay, go back up to the higher subdivision level. Now I have some quick little bits of like material in there, right? Now there are some little like piping and that kind of stuff around here. We're not going to worry about that right now. But I do want to go through and do some final painting and stuff like that, because especially with the face, it's a little plain right now. Now again, see the face has symmetry on, so let's turn symmetry off. I'm going to zoom in here on the face. I'm going to do a couple things. One, I want to paint this. If I hit Shift F, you can see I want to isolate this color. So what I'm going to do is come down here to my Poly Paint menu. Poly Paint allows me to isolate by color. So I'm going to choose Adjust Colors. And if I frame this up, hitting the frame button, I can just grab this little gray box and just tap and drag onto that color. It's going to mask out everything but that color. So now I can just come in here and see how everything's already masked out. So that's good. Go to my paintbrush, B, then P, and grab my paintbrush here. I'm going to choose a little soft brush, tone down my RGB intensity, make sure lazy mouse is turned off, and I'm just going to do a little bit of like coloring here, just kind of like get a little hint of warmth in here, maybe a little bit of a brownish tint as well, just to kind of give him some, you know, some life. I'm going to go to the mouth, maybe, and kind of add a little hint of red to the lip area. Now he's, you know, he's kind of he's a rough looking dude, so we're going to do a little bit of stubble and stuff like that as well. So I'm going to go here to kind of like a bluish gray, very lightly, kind of come around here and just kind of add a little hint of like, you know, like a beard color to this guy. Okay, I can also go to my paintbrush, go to spray and dots, and like a almost black, and with a very, again, low ZBrush intensity here. I can kind of come in here. I can even turn on Z add with a low intensity, just to kind of, that's way too much, just to give it a little bit of stubble. So I can kind of like just spray that on there and kind of give it a little bit of a bump so his face isn't quite so smooth. Right, just kind of throw some of that on there. I'll turn the Z add off now so that it's not going to get too crazy, but I do want to come back up here and kind of, you know, make this a little bit less clean. So I'm just going to come in here and just start throwing in some more stubble color, right? Something like that. And go back. Now again, you can keep the dots. You can, you know, go back to whatever you want. I just want to kind of come in here and just get a little paint going on there. Just clear that mask off. So now that feels a little bit better. And I can do a little bit more too. I'm going to stick with the paintbrush for now. And let's just like hit a little bit of this and liven it up a little bit. So again, you can see here, I could definitely come in here with go to a lower subdivision level maybe, and kind of re-emphasize some of this with my damp standard brush. Just kind of come in and kind of carve in some of these lines and kind of really increase that definition, right? You totally could do that. I'm going to go up to a higher subdivision level here and go to B and then choose that contrast brush, that contrast delta, which will basically go over those areas that have crevices in them and just kind of really enhance that. Now I'm going to turn off RGB because sometimes contrast will also increase the contrast of the paint, which I definitely don't want. So I'm just going to come in here and just let it do some enhancing. But I don't want it to enhance or change the color because that would just be not really what I'm after. But this is kind of a cool, again, this is a cool quick way to just kind of intensify some of the basic sculpting that you've done. Just run over with the contrast brush. Looks pretty cool when you do it that way. All right, now I'm going to go back to my paintbrush here, and again I'm going to sample this brown and then just go to a slightly lighter version of that brown. I'm going to go with a fuzzy alpha, low intensity, and just kind of maybe hit some of the high points of this, just to kind of, again, to add a little variation in color. So it's not, so basically I'm kind of like painting in highlights that serve to emphasize the musculature as opposed to expecting the light to do it all. I'm kind of like cheating basically, right? So just coming in here and just hitting those highlights a little bit. You can do the same thing, you know, with anything, especially when you want to kind of emphasize musculature. That was kind of a cool way to do that, just to kind of come in here, hit those high points with a slightly lighter color. You can get a little lighter too if you want to get really, you know, really bold, right? While I have that same color, I can come here and just hit a little bit of the other brown areas here. So just kind of hit some of the forearm areas and just, you know, make sure symmetry's off. I can do the same kind of thing to the yellow, right? So if I go to the yellow here, hit C to sample and then go to a darker version, I can kind of like just sink some paint into the crevices. Right, again, just to kind of make it so it's not, to make it so it's not just all one uniform color. I can kind of get a little bit of orangish tone in the mask as well, just to kind of to change it up a little bit, so it's not the same everywhere. Go here to the legs. I can kind of do a similar thing. Just kind of paint a little bit of shadow into the crevices between the muscle groups that we created. Maybe hit a little bit more down here. The calves we can probably serve to maybe beef them up a little bit, because now that we have our boots, we know how it looks. Back to my paintbrush, do a little bit more shadowing. Right, I can sample that yellow color and go to a somewhat lighter version of it and do the same thing, right? Come in here, hit the high points now, and make them stand out even more. Do the same thing here on the torso, maybe hit some of those high points. Okay, so we're getting there. So the next video, I'm just going to kind of like show you what else I may have done, just to kind of like, I'm just going to go through, maybe adjust the boots a little bit, add a little bit of variation to them, and then just kind of go over what those things are, so you can kind of determine for yourself whether you want to do that. I'm going to do a little bit more painting here on the arm, maybe do a little spray of the scratch thing here to kind of just rough in some like just some shadowy stuff on there, just to kind of, again, to vary this up a little bit so it's not just the same thing everywhere, just to get some warmth in there. Alright, so let me just show you a couple things I did to kind of like try and give him a little bit more pizzazz here. So I came down here, for example, to the belt, or to the boots. I kind of used that mask curve to mask out certain areas and kind of pulled that out to kind of give it like a 2-level effect, and I painted it just to kind of make it look a little bit more interesting. You see here I masked and extracted some heel covers, again, just to make the boots have a little more going on. Went through and used my standard brush with a spray and that little scratchy alpha to kind of add some texture to the gloves. Again, a little painting here, and I also sprayed some dots with Z Subtract turned on to kind of add some texture to the skin. Right, we've done that before to add pores, so I can just go to like the Z Subtract and come here and just kind of like spray and have that kind of remove or kind of dig in little dots there. Let me just turn off my lazy mouse here. Oh, way too much. But yeah, so you can come in here and just kind of like, you know, with a very, very low intensity and a small brush size, just come in here and just add some skin details. So again, it's not too smooth. I did the same thing here with the face. I went up here and I kind of forgot, I think. I subdivided the mask to get it some more points here, and I just kind of sculpted in a little bit of some folds and wrinkles to kind of go with the face. I gave the face a little bit more dirt. I kind of painted his lips a little bit more, so I just kind of went through and, you know, just did a little bit more detailing. But like, you want to kind of like take a look at what you have and think about how you can improve it, how you can kind of make it look a little bit more compelling to look at, right? So I subdivided the eyes, made sure the eyes are nice and bright, and I kind of, you know, got the camera angle the way I wanted it to, and I took a little render. Right, and there we go. So we have basically, you know, did the best we can to get close to this kind of guy here, but just hopefully this helped show you how you might approach a character who is dramatically kind of like, you know, bulkier or different than one of the base meshes here, and get something fairly close to the ultimate goal there.